You're live.
Thank you, Doctor.
Welcome everybody to the December meeting of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Thank you for your attendance today. The board meeting agenda is provided in your board book. The governance committee met earlier today and has asked this board to affirm their recommendation to pass various items which will be considered today. Our agenda also includes a discussion on the status of ARPA spending in the city of Buffalo and the current status of the parking authority, along with a timetable for selling of the parking ramps through bonds to the extent such information is available. As is our normal practice, we will hold time at the end of the meeting for the privilege of the floor for any individual to speak on matters discussed today. For those watching our meeting online, instructions for speaking at our meeting are available on our website. I will ask Executive Director Rowe to take the roll.
Thank you. Okay, Secretary Floss.
Here.
Director Sanfilippo.
Here.
Director Hove.
Here.
Director Keenan.
Here.
Mayor Scanlon.
Present.
And the Executive Poloncarz.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the BFSA's September 10th, 2025 special meeting and September 22nd, 2025 regular board meeting. Directors will find drafts of those minutes and the accompanying resolutions in your board book under tab 2. Please note that there have been suggested changes to the minutes for the meetings from September 22nd and 25th. A marked copy of those edits are provided in the supplemental folder you have before you today. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? So moved. So moved. Second? Second. Okay. Any discussion other than the changes we've already had? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. The minutes are approved. We have two resolutions before us today honoring both Mayor Scanlon and Commissioner Noseworthy. We'll begin with the resolution for Mayor Scanlon. Whereas on July 3rd, 2003, the New York State Governor signed into law Chapter 122 of the Law of 2003, known as the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority Act, which creates the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority to assist in the restoration of fiscal stability in the city of Buffalo and within its covered organizations. And whereas Christopher P. Scanlon was elected to the City of Buffalo Common Council on May 2012, representing the South District through October 2024, and was elected council president by his colleagues in January 2024. And whereas on October 15th, 2025, Christopher P. Scanlon assumed the role of acting mayor after the resignation of Mayor Byron Brown and was officially sworn in as the 63rd mayor of the city of Buffalo on November 19th, 2024. And whereas Mayor Scanlon endeavored to work collaboratively with stakeholders, including members of government and the residents and business communities within the city, having championed legislation to protect public health and safety, increase access to affordable housing, strengthen neighborhoods, support small businesses, and promote economic development opportunities throughout the city of Buffalo. And whereas during his tenure, Mayor Scanlon served as a director of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority and oversaw the adoption of an annual budget and four-year financial plan, taking significant steps towards restoring fiscal stability to the city and its covered organizations. And whereas Mayor Scanlon has been unwavering in his efforts to improve the quality of life for all the City of Buffalo's residents. And whereas Mayor Scanlon has been tireless in his efforts to advance the mission of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority to restore long-term fiscal stability to the City of Buffalo and its covered organizations. And whereas Mayor Scanlon's innumerable contributions to the City of Buffalo will endure for generations. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority does hereby honor and appreciate Christopher P. Scanlon for his outstanding contributions to the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, the City of Buffalo, and its residents, and the Western New York community. May I have a motion to approve the resolution? Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye?
Aye. One comment on that.
Unanimous? Yes?
On the third whereas, I think the mayor will acknowledge that he probably started serving in October of '24, not '25. It's been more than 2 months.
Yeah.
Does it feel like only 2 months?
No, it feels a lot longer. But, we do really appreciate you stepping into the obvious breach that was here with all of the issues before the city, and you've done it with such grace and class that we really appreciate all your work, and I want to make sure, I think I speak for everyone here, we really do want to thank you for all of this, and we're looking forward to working with you as you go back to the council. Okay? So the motion with the one change has been approved. We have a second resolution that I'd like to read. Whereas on July 3rd, 2003, the New York State Governor signed into law Chapter 122 of the laws of 2003, known as the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Act, which created the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority to assist in the restoration of fiscal stability in the City of Buffalo and within its covered organizations. I got the same one twice.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay, maybe I did. Whereas Christopher P. Scanlon was sworn in as the City of Buffalo's 63rd mayor on November 19th, 2024. And whereas Mayor Scanlon appointed Raymond P. Noseworthy as the City of Buffalo's Commissioner of Administration, Finance, Policy, and Urban Affairs. Oh, I hope. Okay. With Mr. Noseworthy being sworn in on March 12th, 2025. 25 or 2024? 25, good. Whereas Mr. Noteworthy began his career in the public sector as an intern for the City of Buffalo's Department of Community Service and Youth, and has served in various roles, including Assistant Commissioner of Public Works and Management Analyst. And whereas his dedication to the City of Buffalo is clearly demonstrated by his public sector work at the City of Buffalo, having served with distinction over his career. And whereas Mr. Noseworthy's distinguished career and extensive financial budgeting and management experience, including having served as the Director of Administration and Finance under Mayor Byron B. Brown, provided an immeasurable asset in the performance of his duties as Commissioner. And whereas Mr. Noteworthy was designated to represent Mayor Christopher P. Scanlon at meetings of the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. And whereas Mr. Noseworthy worked diligently with the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority to develop a collaborative approach to address the financial challenges facing the City of Buffalo. And whereas Mr. Noseworthy's contributions to the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority the city of Buffalo, and the community will endure and positively impact future generations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority does hereby honor and appreciate Raymond P. Noseworthy for his outstanding contributions to the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, to the city of Buffalo and its residents, and to the Western New York community. Is there a motion to accept the resolution?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Again, Ray, it has been a real pleasure, going out, and I want to make sure that everyone knows how much you work with us behind the scenes to make sure that our meetings ran well and that whatever information we needed or wherever we could help the city, that we were always working together. And we really appreciate that, and we hope that we'll still get to see you around.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you.
Fred, if I may,
Yes.
Jeanette reached out about these resolutions, and I can tell you I did not come over because of the first one. I came over because of this one. I think we're all very aware of the precarious financial situation the city of Buffalo is in, but I can tell you it is in a significantly better position than it was 14 months ago. I can tell you that a couple of days after assuming the role of mayor, I was informed we closed out the 23-24 fiscal year with a $31 million shortfall. And at the end of the first quarter of 24-25, we were facing a $17 million deficit. Also in the subsequent months discovered finally a number that we're probably around a $70 million overall deficit within our budget. Fast forward a year, we closed out 24-25 with a $14 million shortfall, and had it not been for $15 million in unanticipated legal settlements, we would have closed the year out with a surplus. And after the first quarter, a $2 million deficit for the current year, which will be wiped away when there's some other revenues we're anticipating come online. And I can tell you it's a direct result of Ray's work. His efforts with regard to the financial situation and the constraints and the issues that were placed at his feet have been Herculean. And despite receiving a number of criticisms and people taking shots at him for decisions he did not make, he was not in the position to make those decisions at the time. He's conducted himself with nothing but class, and he's been a true professional each and every day. The number of hours that he's put in is staggering, and I just want to congratulate him, thank him, commend him for the incredible work that he has done the last 14 months, because City of Buffalo follows the 4-year plan that Ray has put together with some adjustments as some union contracts come online. We are in a much better position and are on our way to sound financial footing because of the work of Ray and his team, which is very small. He does a lot of this work on his own, late into the night, communicating with his colleagues at the county, here at the BFSA, and I would just want to again thank, congratulate, and commend Ray for the incredible work that he's done the past 14 months.
Well said. Thank both of you for everything. The Governance Committee met earlier today and has recommended board approval of the 2026 board meeting schedule, the 2026-2027 Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Goal Plan, and the 2026-2027 Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business Development Goal Plan. These items are under tab 1 in your board book, with the accompanying draft resolution located under tab 3. I will bring each item separately for a vote. May I have a motion to adopt the regular meeting schedule for calendar year 2026?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, you have a second? Any discussion? Any changes?
I can give you a physical.
Obviously,
For the record,
yes,
I'm going to be unavailable for the one meeting on July 29th.
okay. Thank you, Director Sample. And obviously, if something comes up and we need to change, we'll do that then. If there are no other comments, all those in favor of adopting the calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The calendar is adopted. I have a motion to approve the 2026-2027 Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprise Goal Plan.
So made.
So moved. I second. Okay. Tim? Okay.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Jeanette, do you want to say anything?
I will, comment that our goals are established in terms of the statements put out by the governor's office, and our goal is 30.7% of all qualified spending will be with MWBE entities, but then we have to further split that goal between MBE and WBE, and we split that evenly. Our SCDOB goal is 6% of qualified spending, which also agrees with what the state has issued as a goal.
Thank you. And as we discussed in committee, we've met the goal for this current year, so that we take this pretty seriously as we go on. So, any other discussion? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to
Okay,
approve.
second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, the motion is approved. May I have a motion to approve the 2026-2027 Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business Development Goal Plan?
Motion.
So moved. Second. Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The motion passes. We will move now, and thanks for all of those guys. We will move to our first City of Buffalo agenda item, the review of the final 2024-2025 audited financial statements. This item was submitted to the BFSA on November 19th. Principal Analyst Blink will review the results with us. Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the board today.
Just try pointing right here.
Okay. So the first presentation that we'll be reviewing is the city's financial statement as of June 30th, 2025. First, summary of statement of revenues, expenditures, and change in fund balance. Total revenues for fiscal year 2025 were $645 million. Total expenditures were $590.5 million, with a excess of revenue of $54.5 million over expenditures. Other financing sources, those are the transfers in, is $14.2 million. Other financing uses, largely the transfers out, as well as the expenditure of the ARPA program dollars, totaled $83.5 million, for a net subtotal of $69.3, which leads to a net change in fund balance of $14.8 million at year end. The next slide we have here compares the adopted budget, final budget to actuals. Actual revenue in excess of, or exceeded, budget amount by $57 million. Revenues were $55.4 million. There was an increase of $1.6 million on the transfer in. Expenditures totaled $590.5 million. Excess over the budget amount by almost $12 million. There is approximately $13.6 million in encumbrances. The encumbrances are not broken out and broke in on balance this year. Just to make a note of that. And then you can see there under the actuals where there was a deficit, $14.8 million, and beginning fund balance was $117.8, and ending was $103 billion.
Price, the $103 million, what percentage of that is the rainy day fund?
That is approximately, I want to say 7%. It's $42.3 million, but it is below the 30-day commitment that they have per their charter.
So the ending fund balances at the end of the fiscal year at 24, 25, not including rainy day fund, all other uses was,
60 million. And we will have additional slides breaking out the components.
thank you.
Significant variances to the final general fund budget include, under revenues, we had 58.6 million, which was attributed to the ARPA program funds. Investment income was favorable by 5 million. Property taxes were unfavorable by 6.8 million, and there's three components to that. The occupancy tax, last year was the first year that was proposed. Legislation never passed for that during the fiscal year, so that was unfavorable by 4.2 million. There was lower collections in property taxes, an amount of 2.2 million, and then the pilot payment was 1.1 lower than budget. Under miscellaneous, it was favorable by 5.7 million. Three main components of that was the sale of property at 2.7 million. There was this is net prior year cash and non-cash refunds of 2.4 million, and then miscellaneous lines of 1.5 million that were favorable.
I just insert a comment on this one. Sorry to interrupt, Brad. I just want to kind of highlight that very first bullet point that Bryce has, that federal aid exceeded budget by almost 59 million. That's temporary, and there's an equal offset of expenditures. So, okay, just so everybody understands, when we're looking at total revenue increase year to year, a significant portion of the budget variance was with the federal aid. Thank you, Bryce.
State aid was unfavorable. A couple of components of that included favorable 800,000 for the court facility aid. Tribal state compact revenue was unfavorable by $500,000. Cannabis sales tax was unfavorable by 1 million, and then net unfavorable 1.1 million for the public safety grants. Local sources, was unfavorable by 5.3 million. This is net of several different revenue sources for the city of Buffalo. So charges for services and licenses and permits were both unfavorable by 2.6 million each. Non-property taxes, utility taxes largely, were unfavorable by 1.1 million. Fines were unfavorable by 800,000, and these unfavorable variances were offset by sales tax being favorable by 1.8 million. Transfers in were favorable by 1.6 million. That was due to an increase in transfers in from the parking fund. Total transferred in from the parking fund was 4.4 million. Moving on to expenditures, discussing some of the high-level variances year to year. Police department was unfavorable by 5.8 million. This was largely attributed to overtime and duty disability payments. You'll see that the annual salary was favorable by 4.1 million. Holiday pay was favorable by 2.5 million. Overtime was unfavorable by 7.5 million. Duty disability at 3.6 million. And then court time was unfavorable by 1.7 million.
Bryce, does that include the lines that weren't filled too? They're 5.8 plus per.
That would be accounted for under the annual salary for the vacancies. Moving on to the fire department. Fire department expenditures were unfavorable by 9.2 million. This was primarily attributed to the duty disability at 5 million unfavorable and overtime being unfavorable by 6.9 million. The favorable savings there was the 2.2 million for annual salary. Those would be the vacant salary lines. Employee benefits were unfavorable by almost $5 million. All other departments and general charges were favorable on a net basis by $8 million year to year.
And then, as Jeanette mentioned earlier,
ARPA program funds, that's where you see the unbudgeted unfavorable amount of 47.1 million. So the revenue was up by a corresponding amount, and you see it as a transfers out for the federal program dollars.
Price, almost $5 million negative variance in benefits. Which benefits?
Largely health insurance.
Active, retiree, both?
Mainly active. I I double checked, but I think, retiree was down year to year, but it was active primarily.
Mentioned in there too, Larry?
It would be rolled in there too.
Bring it. There you go.
So year to year, that's what the chart here is, revenue comparison year to year. From 24 to 25, revenues increased by 51.2 million. You'll see other financing sources decrease year to year, 42.6 million. That decrease year to year is really reflective of a bond issue 2 years ago for the payment of a legal settlement. So net, year to year, it was an increase of 8.6 million. This slide here is really a high level of a lot of the major year-to-year variables that change. Large components of federal stimulus, you see that's increased by 9.8 million year to year. Fiscal year 25 was the first year of 2 years that the city will receive a temporary spin-up of AIM at $5 million. Medicare Part D increased by 5 million year to year. Tribal state compact casino dollars came in 3.7 million higher compared to the prior year. Positive variance or increase in sales tax of 3.8 million. Property taxes, there's two components to that. There's the actual property tax levy as well as the STAR payment. So that was a increase of 13.8 million year to year. Fines and service charges, net increase of 4 million year to year. The miscellaneous line increase of 15.4 million year to year. Major variations there driving that increase was the sale of property, net increase on public safety grants for fire and police. So miscellaneous, there's about 6 different revenue sources that got us to that positive year to year on miscellaneous. 2 decreases year to year include interest income earned, that decreased by 5.8 million. 2 components of that. One, the ARPA program dollars have been being spent down. As they spend down, there's less being held, as well as the decrease in interest rates recently. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's that bond for the legal settlement year to year. That's a decrease of almost 40.
Bryce?
Yes.
Just one quick, the temporary AIM, that 5 million, is that just a one shot? Or is that?
It's going to be for 2 years. So first year was fiscal year 25, and this is the second year of it.
It can actually that $5 million that we get additional aid.
Could you share the legislation with me? Because just a couple, like 2 months ago, I talked to DOB to verify, and it was only 2. If you'll share it with me, please. On the revenue, what we have here is a historical sales tax revenue between 2015-16 through 24-25. You'll see the significant increase between fiscal year 20 and fiscal year 21, and that was really attributed to the Wayfair decision where the internet sales tax collection. Slide, please. Next few slides, we'll review the year-to-year comparison on the expenditures. Total expenditures year to year decreased by 8.2 million. So under other financing uses, there was an increase of 9.5 million, but the expenditures themselves, departmental, general charges, decreased by 17.7 million year to year. Significant expenditures include public safety, which increased by 5.1 million year to year. I'd like to note that both fire and police contracts expired at the end of June 30, 2025. So fiscal year 2025 reflects the last adjustment they received for their contracts. Year-to-year employee benefits increased by 9.3 million, largely driven by health insurance and pension there. Streets and sanitation decreased by 4.3 million year to year. Part of that's attributed to the series of snowstorms in 2024, that December-January period of the prior fiscal year. General government support decreased by roughly 100,000. Other decreased by 27.8 million year to year. The driver there on the other is the settlement for prior year judgment of claim. So 2 years ago, there was that large single case which was bonded out for that we discussed. The 20.2 for fiscal year 25 does include an additional 15.5 or so more than what was originally budgeted for. So even with the decrease year to year, compared to budget, that amount is still about 15 million higher than what was budgeted. And then transfers out increased 9.6 million. That's really reflective of the use of the ARPA program dollars going out to the subdivisions. Right, yes.
Looking at the employee benefits as a percentage of what the salary structure is, what is the percentage right now in the city of Buffalo when you compare the salary total to what the benefit would be? For example, we, in the county, our benefit amount is about 48% of what the salaries are. I get the impression in the city that that number is going to be a lot higher.
It is getting closer to that. I do not have that percentage with me, but I'll pull it at 236.
On average is about like 50%.
Yeah.
About 50%.
It would be good to know, just to see how it is kind of comparable to governments, if their benefit package is that much different. or
The state is
similar.
higher, like, they're charging upstate now 64 cents on the dollar.
With some of the bargain units too, it varies wildly, depending on seniority and.
I understand.
The various health insurance. Yeah.
So, but it's comparable or similar to?
I'm gonna say it's over.
You said it's around 50.
It varies a lot,
48.
on average, like if you were just to do an average of all, but
Okay.
depending on what union you're talking about, it
Yeah.
can vary.
It would be good to know that, if there could, because as the city goes forward, it has to be able to take a look at where there are potential changes that can be made. Some might not be able to, and others are completely out of comp compared to their similar type municipalities, not just in New York, maybe elsewhere. So it'd be good to know that.
Absolutely. And, just for a note on that, included in the employee benefits is the component for retiree health insurance, which is approximately $45 million there. So it is a benefit, but it is something that the current employees are not necessarily receiving. So I will provide the percentages with it, and then I'll cut it out to show what it is for employees.
Thank you.
The next schedule we have here is a 10-year look back at the actual and final budget amounts for revenues. Historically, prior to fiscal year 2021, the actuals were coming in below, prior to 2021, actuals were below the final budget amount, but then you've seen that flip since 2021. A lot of that's being driven by the ARPA dollars. So over the next year, that's going to be wrapping up, and you won't be seeing significant federal dollars coming through. There are no more ARPA dollars being used for revenue replacement. It's now all programmatic going out as transfers out. Similar to the previous one, this is a 10-year look back of the actual compared to final budget amounts. Historically, prior to fiscal year 23, actual amounts were below the final budget amount. And then the last 2 years, fiscal year 24, 25, seeing that trend flip. What's really driving that is two-part. One, being the unbudgeted ARPA program dollars going out, and two, the settlement for prior year legal settlement. So that's really what's driven it the last 2 years. So next couple of slides, we'll be discussing fund balance. So year to year is a decrease of 14.8 million in fund balance. At this time, the city has zero for assigned and unassigned. Committed, the rainy day fund at 42.3 million, which is approximately 6.8, 6.9 million below the city's authorized amount for the charter. And then the non-spendable restricted portion is 60.7 million. So
What's that usually entail?
That's gonna be I have another slide with the detail on it. No, you're fine. We can actually move right on to that next. So that non-spendable restricted component of 60.7, are the following pieces. There's 9.1 million for real estate acquired from, resale. 28.3 million is due from the refuse. So this is, as we've discussed, refuse fund's been operating, at a loss, and, they owe the general fund 28.3 million. Prepaid, 1.5 million, the capital outlay at 21.2 million, and then emergency medical services at 600,000.
I had one question. On the unassigned fund balance, at the third quarter report, there was the indication that there was $3.6 million of unassigned remaining.
That was assigned, it moved classification, so at the end of year, fiscal year 24,
Okay.
it was supposed to be the 14.9 million of unassigned to be used, but then they spent down a portion of that, and that 3.6 was moved from unassigned to assigned for
Okay.
fiscal year 24.
Okay, so the 3.6 is now included in the June 30th, 2024 of 12.3 that you're showing?
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
I have a question on the due from refuse fund. Is it logical to assume that'll never get paid?
I mean,
As
that's
a result, it's basically just a line that could be zeroed out. I mean, you're holding it in your fund balance.
It is a enterprise fund, so it is supposed to be self-sufficient. It's up to the administration to come up with the rates and try to close that out. I do have a slide that shows the operating income on that, and you'll see there was a few years where they actually reduced the, the fund, which had an impact, on the fund balance piece due from the refuse fund. That is a policy decision. I believe the enterprise fund has only been in existence for about 25 years. So at one point, the services were handled by the general fund operationally, but being an enterprise fund is supposed to be self-sufficient. The administration and the common council need to work on that and determine how they would like to address
It's my understanding the fund was created basically to create a fee which could be charged to charitable and not-for-profit entities as compared to taxes, which could not. Just concerned because that's a fee structure that probably could be changed to or better offset the cost. The town or the city shouldn't be eating that cost out of its rainy day fund.
It's been proposed,
Yeah.
by the mayor in the past to increase it, and council did.
We made that recommendation as well.
To your point, this was written off as bad debt.
Yeah.
What would be the impact on the bottom line? Would decrease the fund balance by that much more,
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
and actually hit the general fund if you wrote it off, right?
Yeah.
And what is the likelihood of collecting any or all of it?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a long-term effort, obviously, to chip away at that. But changes in services have been proposed. Obviously, I publicly stated user fee really needs to go up, next fiscal year. I mean, we can't probably just gradually plan out something, but, yeah. At least
Who
having that number.
determines the user fee?
What's that?
Who determines the user fee?
My office can calculate that. So I think it was 2 years ago.
But who sets it? Does the council approve, or? It's not a
As part of the
separate-
budget process, yes. As far as adopting the budget.
How many years has that, fee been stabilized? Has it been going up over the years? You said, what, 25 years?
Yeah, it's peaks and valleys.
Is it,
right into the-
okay, I didn't
like
know if
property
it's
tax.
been, hasn't been increased in how many years? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, there's a, 24 was when and then 2018, I think, was the time before that. So it was a
Yes.
Okay.
stretch, right? And so, I mean, that delta, I mean, we have to do that more commonly in
Okay.
smaller increments, because the 2024 was a sizable amount, but as you can see, it's still, it doesn't cover it.
Doesn't
Yeah,
cover.
Yeah. I mean, but we propose things like changing the, cycling program and things like that.
And obviously, if our property tax increase recommendations are taken, then on the other side, just from fairness perspective, the piece to So this fund should go up as well.
I don't know what happened.
You would think.
I don't want to beat this dead horse,
Yeah.
but what would be the way to close that gap? Is it higher fees, or are there expenditures that are out of control?
Because, we also have labor budgeted in that enterprise fund, so the local 264 contract, as those that pay, goes up, that also takes a hit. So we have to be mindful of that, but my suggestion would be, yes, fees have to go up, and then also looking at the type of services, because even, like e-waste, which used to bring in money, now that's a cost that actually is incurred in that.
Yeah, that's actually a huge problem, because China used to buy all of that, and they don't buy anything anymore.
Yeah. So it wasn't
We would get
lucrative.
a significant amount of, surplus, like in recyclables. and
Right,
things like
right.
that.
And this was even brought up yesterday in council about why, TV, I mean, the state law is we can't allow collection of those type of things at the curb, so we have to dispose of it adequately. So it's like, we can't just like not collect those items. So it's tricky.
And just correct me if I'm wrong here, but because that's in the enterprise fund and a user fee, that lives outside of your tax cap calculation, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Bryce? All right. Non-spent restricted. Okay, moving on to the committed fund balance summary. Subject to purpose constraints imposed by common council. As we've recently seen, common council actually took action on it this year to utilize approximately $6.8 million of the rainy day fund to close out this past fiscal year. Current balance is $42.3 million in the emergency stabilization fund. The decrease of $8.4 million year to year. Approximately $2 million of that was going to be reduced as expenditures were reduced year to year. Based on that calculation, that $2 million was free.
Oh, okay.
2 years ago, there was that public PBA contract, so you had some retro and a few one-time costs in fiscal year '24. They increased the calculated amount. So year to year, there was a decrease there. Currently, the emergency stabilization fund is short by approximately $7 million. It should be at 49.2. Should be equal to 30 days of prior fiscal year's total general fund operations. And it's intended for extraordinary operating or capital needs that cannot be anticipated, cannot be funded with current budget resources.
Now, what is the charter then mandated process now at this point, knowing that the emergency stabilization fund is short and it's required to be at a level? What's the process that's going to take place?
I believe it's early January, February, a plan has to be submitted to council showing how they are looking at addressing the shortage. And it'll be taken up in the upcoming budget.
Okay, so basically that means at minimum, they have to have a $6.9 million surplus.
I believe it's a 2 year.
Over 2 years.
Oh, it's over 2 years. Okay, you have 2 years to address it? Okay.
That's with no deficit in the current
Other
year.
than-
Correct. I'm saying, with these assumptions, but in theory, over a 2 year period, you have to have a combined $6.9 million surplus just to get even.
Correct, as long as expenditures
And,
don't.
and that's a local charter requirement.
Correct. Yeah, that's their,
Other cities in the state have that same type of requirement?
many have something similar, but not exactly. Like the county has something similar that says we have to have 5% set aside based on our prior year expenditures minus shared sales tax. It's not exactly the way the cities is, because that's about the prior year audited financials, so it's an extra year delay.
I assume that's done to gain favor with the rating agencies.
It is, GFOA tends to say you're supposed to have 2 months, which is for small municipalities or organizations, it's a reasonable number. For large governments, it's absurd. It's way too much. For the county, that would be over $300 million of fund balance.
Now, some of
Increase your interest earnings.
And school districts also have requirements too.
Yeah, but everybody determines it on their own. I don't think there's a specific singular way.
Now, in regards to other cities, I know as of last year, either Syracuse or Yonkers had a fund balance policy for the rainy day or committed stabilization. Rochester did not appear to have one, and I could not, receive clarification from anybody at the city of Rochester on that. So in some ways, Buffalo was leading the way, but, a lot of these other municipalities are faced with expenditures, limited revenue, and a lot of them do utilize fund balance year to year. When they run a surplus, they'll use the fund balance in the following year to minimize the property tax increase.
Can we go back to the expenditures for just a moment?
Yes.
On the police and fire, I've been hearing about it for years, the overtime, people out on disability, and, large budget overruns. Can you share with us the kind of things that are being done to address it? Like, are there meetings with the union? Go ahead.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, so, the police and fire, I mean, they're both very similar in how, we have to very strictly follow, obviously, the CBA, right? And a lot of those provisions go back 30-plus years. And then it's a very, very intricate document to follow. But with all that said, I know I've personally met with management. I'll talk about police. There's actually some really good ideas that some management rights that can be exercised to minimize a good fraction of the expenditures. But a lot of what we see here is based off of how the CBA works, just in essence with how overtime is allotted, staffing requirements, and it's very similar to fire. So
Well, I would think that if we looked at the number of employees, vacancies,
Yeah.
that the two highest employee groups are your police and fire. I don't know if there's any way to minimize the vacancy, or if there's any sort of classes that are coming to start hiring, because you got significant vacancies in public safety in this city.
Yeah, so there's definitely concerns about that. So that's something that we report quarterly as far as the retirements in both police and fire. I'm in constant contact with that. We have a threshold when we set the budget as to, we project the amount of attrition that we expect to have that year. So the police and fire attrition is handled a bit differently than how other department attrition is handled. We really do try to take into account the new recruits and everything. And if we see that attrition level start going beyond what we anticipate, then, okay. And we're starting to look at that now with police, right? You see you have the PBA saying that there's up to 78 people that can retire because of certain health provisions that they're concerned about. I mean, that's a concern internally.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the analysis you guys were showing, we were positive on the salaries, but we're in the negative on overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, somewhere along the way.
But that, I mean, we've seen this traditionally, is what we've done to mitigate overtime is to balance that with vacancies.
Yeah.
And at some point, there's a crossover, and we need to know what the optimal amount is, because it isn't always better to hire an extra cop or fire person because you've got to pay all of their benefits.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these make sense. The question is, are we managing the vacancies versus the salaries correctly to make it, the best use of our resources?
Right.
Well, but to Tom's point, this isn't new. It's happening every budget year in and year out, year in and year out. So somewhere along the way, someone's got to take responsibility to appropriately budget for the overtime, given the fact that you have vacancies in both of those units.
But for a number of years, the vacancies covered the overtime. That was their point.
That hasn't been working.
But that hasn't been working in the last couple of years.
Yeah, particularly with the police contract, with those
With the new
pays going
contract.
up, that was a good sizable jump, obviously, because then you have the salary increases. But then the actual overtime that's paid out, particularly to maybe more senior employees, has really seen a jump just within the last couple of years. So, yeah, that's.
Well, you know what, take the financial part out of it. I mean, you got a lot of police and firemen that are working a lot of overtime. What kind of strength or, what kind of efficiency are they able to generate, as far as energy or, you know, security, and, I mean, I'm more concerned also about side, from the budget side. Their ability to do the job as efficiently as a, you know, a healthy, younger or whatever firefighter or police officer. I mean, you know, you got a lot of people working a lot of hours, generating a lot of overtime. You know, after a while, you know,
Your safety.
as a person, how much energy are you gonna be able to have to perform your safety requirements or obligations?
Tim?
Yeah, I was gonna touch on that point as far as figuring out that balance between the vacancy savings, the overtime, but the point that he just brought up as far as what type of worker compensation claims are we seeing with individuals getting hurt and some other things that are impacting us, as well as if we're looking at individuals retiring, are we able to bring in new officers at the rate we need to, and obviously it would be at a lower pay grade than those that are retiring. So as we said, it's been something that we've been trying to fight over and figure out for the longest. We just have to figure out that balance between vacancy savings and balancing that overtime with that right mix, both in police and fire.
And we've got to throw in the special pension system for police and fire, which is where they can retire at 55. 20 years.
20 years of service.
In which, in one way, lowers the pension because they're not working to 65 and not getting the raises, but on the other hand, that's why they're pushing for the overtime, is because they're not getting the same kind of level of pension. And so this gets to be a much more complex thing, particularly when you have to negotiate with them, and they know that, what we've said here as well, and that they can go to arbitration. So we have to be careful too.
And I go back to the other municipalities. Are the other cities in New York State facing the same time? Overtime and disability.
Yeah.
Disability.
That's a good, I mean,
Right.
so to compare it to other municipalities, we did do a study, a couple of years ago, comparing proportionally public safety expenses, compared to the DPW, other departments. The city of Buffalo is like right in line with Syracuse, Rochester, Yonkers, all the other major New York cities. Our public safety expenses, when you look at our actual budget, is not wildly disproportionate when you compare it to other cities. So, I mean, I know that there's some public sentiment of us like trying to cut overtime by millions or tens of millions of dollars. That's a very difficult proposition to absorb, right? We have to just, as been said here, manage it adequately using whatever management rights we have and proper negotiation of the future CBAs. It's going to be essential.
All right,
So,
I get it.
yeah.
And just a reminder in regards to overtime, especially with these two departments, these union groups, the preference is for the senior membership to receive that overtime. They get first choice. So ideally, you would want some of the newer recruit fire and police being able to pick up this overtime, going back to Filippo's comment about health and safety and avoiding workers' comp, but it's flipped.
Well, that flies in the face of the way our pension system is written, because it's the last 3 or 5 years, depending on which year you're in. So senior people want to get more because that gives them more pension. Junior people have years to be able to get their overtime later. Now, the change in the law under Tier 6 is going to help that to some extent because they can only use, I think it's 10%. Higher for overtime, so that should move us in the right direction to some extent, but we're going to have to look at that. But the other thing I think we need to think about here is there a way to generate revenue? What kinds of overtime are we doing for certain events that we maybe should be charging, organizations and other people to use our police services or our fire services for that matter, to try to cover some of those costs. So I don't think it's just on the expense side, but we've also got to look at the revenue side. I think we've made that recommendation in the past, if I'm not.
Yeah. Well, and that the city tried to do that and it was shot down by the common council.
Right.
Correct?
But given, I think we're gonna have to push back again on it, given the critical nature of where they are at this point, and say this is an option that you need to take seriously.
I mean, and just on that note, I mean, we have out-of-state entities and organizations coming to Buffalo to do special events, which is good, but they're saying like we are literally probably the most affordable in like the nation when it comes to the public safety and some of those special event fees. I mean, it's so we're kind of giving a lot of this away in a sense.
So Ray, have you calculated what that might look like? When you say,
so, I mean,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not like it would be tens of millions of dollars, right? But if a movie is being filmed here, or if there's a marathon, some of the policies or special events fees that get waived, or just the overtime rates, that's very antiquated. I think currently it's still like $65 an hour, which is extremely low. When you look at our actual public safety costs, it's closer to like $150 an hour. And so we're really just absorbing these costs, which is it's not a reasonable practice.
Should be a progressive fee schedule that follows the pay scale.
Right. And
or at least inflation.
Right. I mean, and we already have these rules on the books. We are allowed to charge at cost whatever these are for these events. So we can definitely improve that.
Thanks.
I have to run.
All right.
I just want to make an observation regarding. Yeah, there's a continual debate going on. Ask the fiscal authority to do an analysis of the past year's capital budgets of our comparable cities. And I don't just mean Rochester and Syracuse. I mean Cleveland. The reason I ask is I looked at some of their capital budgets, and the city of Buffalo's capital budget is 3 to 4 times less than what these other communities are doing, which are comparable in size and geographic size. When I say size, population. I'm very concerned about the future of the city's investments in capital projects. We are falling well behind. Every year that increases, or every year that goes, we have increases in inflation of anywhere from 3 to 5%. It seems like the city is working on a capital budget financial program that's still based in late 1980s, early 90s. And this isn't a criticism of the current administration. I think they've tried doing that, but I want to see an actual analysis to make comparable determination of where the city of Buffalo is on its capital budget as compared to our comparable cities.
And when you say comparable, what do you mean?
Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Rochester, Syracuse.
So what indicators? Are you talking about size, the budget, population?
I want to know the size of their budget. I want their full budget, their capital budget, their what they're investing their capital budget in. It's quite apparent that some people in the city of Buffalo are thinking it's 1989 and not 2025.
Okay, I think for one of the comparables, though, we should also include wealth.
Can't do that.
Well,
you don't have.
Yeah. Well, it's about affordability.
I want to talk about this, Andy. One of the wealthiest zip codes in all of Western New York is actually in the city. 14209 and 14222, as well as parts of 124-201 are some of the wealthiest parts of Western New York and Erie County. Because we've actually.
And where are the poorest parts?
Are in the city of Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean,
Pittsburgh has the same.
I don't mind the comparables, Mark, don't get me wrong, I don't mind the comparables, but you gotta talk about wealth of the tax base.
And we can do that. And
I think we can put together an analysis that takes all of this into consideration.
I mean, just because you have 5 or 6 homes in the Elmwood Village that are worth $2 million doesn't necessarily mean that falsely raises the standard of wealth in the city as a whole.
Stop acting like this were in the Griffin administration.
No.
The Massachusetts administration. Truthfully, Or we need
Is that a
to,
personal insult at me?
no, but I'm just saying, we need to stop acting like this is 20, 30 years ago, and the city of Buffalo is a different city.
But we're also talking about, are we gonna compare budget deficits? Are we gonna talk about,
Well, they don't have budget deficits.
no, that's right, so,
They run their government.
see, like, that's another comparable. You know, how many cities we're gonna compare?
I'm sorry.
You gotta talk-
Controller on,
You have to
everybody
talk
knew,
about
let me just,
boards.
everybody knew this deficit was coming prior to COVID. Everybody knew it.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here 3 years after COVID, 5 years after everyone expected a 10 to 20 or greater $1 million deficit, and we're acting like everything is fine.
Everything is not fine.
No, it's not.
I mean, listen, let's talk about, does Pittsburgh have a $50 to $70 million budget deficit?
No.
Do they have an operating deficit from the current, or the past fiscal year? And
But you can't ignore
But that's
infrastructure.
comparable, Mark.
How about I?
We can,
I'm
why don't
gonna
we-
tell you a story someday offline of what people in our own community. Let's look at Lackawanna. Lackawanna and the tax rate in Lackawanna and the investment they do in infrastructures compared to the city of Buffalo. They have tight budgets, but you can't act like you're nickeling and diming a government and thinking that it's fine.
It's still about.
I understand, I understand, controllers, I get it, I was a controller, you wanna do policy, you can't do policy, but you
I get
can't
it.
act like everything is nickel and dime and expect it to be good in the future.
But you can't pick out favorable cities that'll make your eyes.
They're not unfavorable, they are our
We can-
peer cities.
I will, why don't you let?
If you want unfavorable cities, I'll include Houston and Charlotte and Phoenix. I'm not doing it. Stop, take your damn head out of the sand.
Oh, you stop.
All right.
Take your damn head out of the sand, Andrew.
Quit being a politician.
You were the ultimate politician.
let us get back
We're both
to,
fiscal people, and you know it too.
I understand. Let us get back, to Bryce's report.
Yeah, my head out of the sand.
And, if you'll all allow us to work, and I'll work with Jeanette to be able to put together
Borrow money that people can't afford to pay.
an appropriate
They
analysis
can't,
to
they
do.
can't, don't even have capacity to do the project.
And Andy, we can work on some of those things too. I think equity is a very important part of this, but there are other ways, while we can raise money and still do, what Mark's talking about as well. We can talk about circuit breakers, we can talk about Enhanced Star, we can take care of the individuals who are poor here without, bankrupting the rest of this. But it's gonna take a lot of work, and it's gonna take a lot of analysis, and it's gonna take all of us working together to be able to try to do that. So, you know, you both have, I think, important points. We have to figure out how to do that. We're where we are because of all of the economic conditions and everything that's happened to not only the city of Buffalo, but to the state of New York. And in the next couple of years, given what's happened at the federal level with what's already been passed, things are gonna be even harder, and we're gonna have to figure this out. And it's gonna be painful, and I think we all know that. And how we do that, and I think that's what this board is really for, so we can have the kinds of decisions, financial and others, that don't have to take the same kind of politics into account, that we can give good recommendations, strong recommendations on the capital budget, on equity, and making sure that when we're done, that the city's moving in the right direction. And I know, working with Ray, we've been trying to do that as much as we can behind the scene, and we've done it when Chris was both, you know, on the council and as mayor. I think, you know, everybody would realize that COVID has really thrown a lot of the recommendations we've made off kilter, that we've missed a couple of years where we had made recommendations. I think the city was moving in the right direction, and then COVID stopped that. And we've still got to, now we've got to figure out how to catch up. Okay?
Hey, so did that room melt all the snow in Western New York? Because it was pretty warm in there. So, and so I know that we want to move on, but I just want to add this. It's so I don't know if, let me say it this way. I think an analysis is good. A comparison is good. It's not saying that we're moving in that direction. It's just saying we're just looking and seeing what's happening. And so I appreciate all sides of the argument, and I do look forward to an analysis just to compare ourselves to see where we are. And if we can get an equitable one, that would be great. But I think we need to do this, as you said, as we work through these financial issues. But keep the temperature down in there.
We'll be okay. I think we're gonna be fine. It's good to have strong opinions and to make sure that everybody here can state, that's why we're here. So I think that this is a good way of working with the board, and I know that we'll all be fine together.
Well, no, I just think that, when we do the comparison, you know, let's include all the comparables.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to do.
No,
You know, whether you
it's
talk about
fine.
size of budget, population, you know, there's other factors or other ingredients in the comparables. That's all I was.
Yeah, you want to get a thorough analysis, a true comparison. Yeah. Hey,
We'll
just-
get that done.
From the Rust Belt cities, since we're all kind of faced with a lot of the same pending issues.
But we're now seeing Dallas and Houston and a lot of the other southern cities coming into the same problems that we are. They're just a few years behind us as we start to look at the difficulties that they have. But the biggest difficulty is the size of the city of Buffalo compared to the size of Houston, which is like 100 times larger in land mass and has taken over what would be all of Erie County to be called,
Certainly a comparable.
you know.
Our, like, what is the square mileage? 42? 42 miles?
Right, and it's like over 1,300 for Houston. So we, you know, it's an interesting,
That's what I mean.
I do this
I
all the
only
time.
suggest that
Yeah.
if you're gonna do comparables,
We can do
compare
it.
the comparables.
No, and that's fine, and we will. I shouldn't be speaking for you. I'll come out as we go through all of that and do all that. Bryce, why don't you
All right,
continue?
this slide is just showing what's available for signed, fund balance. Year to year, that's decreased by 12.3 million. Mark, this goes back to your earlier question about
Mhm,
that.
there it is. Yep.
There's that 3.6.
I'll go back to it for a second.
Yep.
I think it's really important to talk about encumbrances. And the 13.6 million of encumbrances that exists at the end of 6/30/2025, that there isn't a set aside in fund balance for. So that will inherently
Get paid
put
off
more
of the budget
pressure.
for 26, and also to add on to that is the judgment.
So what are we looking at? I'm sorry.
What are those encumbrances?
Those are prior year contracts that
Okay.
still need to be honored, so we don't have the funding to carry over.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking about using, 8.7 of the rainy day fund?
So we're gonna use general fund dollars from fiscal year 26
Right.
to pay those
Yeah,
Oh,
costs as they.
it's gonna reduce the amount. Yeah,
Was there not a reserve for the encumbrances that were made
We
at
don't
the end
have
of
enough
June?
in the reserve to set it aside. Now we have to use 26, revenue to cover those bills.
How did you enter into the contracts without sufficient funds?
Well, you enter into it.
Right, multi-year, like,
Over a period of
they could have
time.
been contracts that were executed like 2 years ago, or what have you.
So you encumber the contract, you encumber the
but you
fund.
didn't encumber the money into the reserve fund under the encumbered, yeah.
Reserve.
Essentially, the reserve fund dropped and they didn't have enough money to cover it.
Right.
Is what they're saying. And now they have to take it out of the general fund to get back to
They didn't budget
zero.
for it, they didn't budget for it in
They
25.
didn't budget for it.
You anticipate it. The same thing goes for judgment and claims, where that number should be around another 13.6 million that we should, set aside, if we have assigned fund balance. So overall, this is something that the controller, we did report yesterday, was almost like $27 million that should be in assigned fund balance to cover prior year encumbrances and judgment claims, where we don't have those funds to cover fiscal year 26.
But
Puts
will,
a tremendous amount of pressure
Strain
Yeah.
on the
on
general
the
fund.
26.
but will we, I mean,
I'm not-
is there,
Judgments and claims are sometimes difficult because they
Yeah.
They kind of manifest out of thin air sometimes, you know,
Yeah, but-
you don't know, you have a trial that's going and it could last 2 more years, and then you immediately do a settlement or something like that. That one's a little harder to prepare for, but the encumbrances, if you're entering into contracts, you need to budget for the out years, at least annually, you know, for it. I mean, I know how multi-year contracts work, and so you can do it one of 2 ways. You can budget for everything at the very beginning and do it like sort of as a prepaid, or you just budget for each year independently and just add that into it as you go along. And it sounds like neither of those were done?
Normally, we budget for the annual expense of the contract.
Sure.
And what's the, on judgments, and claims at the bottom, are we looking still to not bond any of those and spread the costs out over whatever number of years?
We'll have
5 years?
5 years.
Yeah, unless it's like a $100 million.
No, I understand, but we're looking at a number of large claims coming up.
So we already reported, we even work with our law department between 14 to 44 million in large hospital claims that the city will have to bond out.
And, yeah, we don't have reserves or other places to find that kind of money at this point in time. And we're gonna have to figure out what happens if those.
It goes back to the capital issue. I understand everybody wants development, but someone's got to pay that expense at some point in time. So the more we borrow, the more it increase our revenue. We can't even increase our revenues based off operations.
But we also have to look at the cost benefits. So if you don't put a roof on a building, it may cost you more than if you.
It goes back to Andy's.
Yeah.
We just got off on 3 different tangents there.
Yeah, no.
We started on encumbrances, judgment claims, and then we
Yeah.
talked about capital budget.
And now we're back to the capital.
Let's try to stick with one thing at a time, because I think
But it's all part
Jeanette is
of.
right, though,
yeah.
about the encumbrances.
Yeah.
If I'm understanding what she's saying. Is the $13 million of prior year expenses that haven't been paid for in last year, have not been reserved for last year, and have not been budgeted for this year? Is that a $13.6 million hole in the budget?
Yeah.
That is how I would.
That would be exactly what
Yeah.
that is, yes.
So
Some
this
of the
projection of a
contracts-
$2.6 million deficit does not take into consideration a $13.6 million hole?
But Delano made a good point, as part of that 13 may not be getting paid out this year.
Oh, yeah, well, it would be important to know what the 2025, 26 amortized sort of portion of that theoretically would be.
Yeah, so the
The
projected
13
annual,
is all of it.
So it
It
could
might
be
be
some
less.
contracts that are like 5-7 year, you know,
I was just ready to say.
I think it would be important to know that.
From the encumbrances, if they been doing the work, is the contract been satisfied?
yeah,
Gonna be canceled.
some,
yeah, I think that would probably be an important thing that I think the board would
Exactly.
want to know is at least what the,
What's the
what the liability is for the 25, 26 fiscal year portion of those encumbrances would be. Because I don't want to assume 13.6 when it's not really, that's not the problem.
Yeah, I mean, that's
And has
the point
any
I'm
of
trying
it
to
been
make,
budgeted for?
Well,
is
the policy,
what's the status of those
Yeah,
encumbrances?
I get it.
the policy is that they expire after 1 year. I don't know. if
But we carry them
policy
over.
is-
We allow
carry them
Carry it
them to
over,
carry over.
okay, okay.
And I think the other thing that we need to do to recommend to the finance committee of council is, I don't know that they understand all of this going forward. And I know that, I know you've tried to talk to them before, but it does seem to me that there does need to be some more work done with the finance committee to try to get some of this stuff under control, particularly before they start to vote on taking back stuff that they maybe don't realize what's actually happening. Maybe we need to do a little bit more education with them.
And what about the common council?
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The finance
Their
committee of
finance
the county, yeah, not our.
Oh, you're not going to be able to get to that. It's way over here.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it really rolled.
Listen, all right. Bryce, why don't you go on? I know we're.
Anything else on the assignment balance, or?
yeah,
One last thing.
just one last thing on the encumbrances, that, I've actively communicated with the departments and identifying certain contracts. This was last fiscal year, as far as disencumbering funds that, like, are not going to be spent out, just so we can release that, because a lot of them can be.
That comes in as a refund of prior year expenses.
Yeah, so once that gets disencumbered, that number should go down. So I'm working on that, I just wanted to make that point, so it's not like we're just letting that.
Okay.
All right, moving on to the next slide. What we have here is the, City of Buffalo unrestricted total fund balance going back to fiscal year, 2003 up through, year-end 2025. The black line is total fund balance over that period, and the orange line, orange-red, is the unrestricted. The unrestricted included assigned, unassigned, and committed. So currently, total fund balance is 103 million, and 42.3 of that is the unrestricted.
That's the main day.
Correct.
Right, in the future with charts like this, because obviously we have basically three numbers that are particularly important, right? You have the overall fund balance, which is probably the least important of all those because it includes, the assigned things and you spend assigned fund balance. You have the unassigned, which obviously at this point is zero, but then you have the committed, which is the rainy day fund, and obviously that number's, changing separately. So it would be nice to see all three of those.
So taking the unrestricted and breaking out the committed and then having the other two pieces.
Yeah, because obviously, overall fund balance can be important, but it's the least important of all of them. I mean, when we look at the counties, our unassigned is going up, but our overall fund balance is going down, and I can talk to the rating agencies and explain why that's completely foreseeable because it's all encumbered for capital projects, and you spend that money on the capital projects and so forth.
I don't know if I'm getting ahead of the game, but since Delano's here, of that 42.3, what is the actual number of the rainy day fund that you're to try to use to offset the deficit in last year's budget?
There's like 6.8.
6.8, so that is the number.
There was, like Brian said
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Calculation,
Okay.
we should have set aside 49 million.
Yeah, okay,
Since we had to tap into the money.
okay. No, I'm sorry. I just,
Yeah, it was 50.7
yeah,
prior to the usage.
okay.
Well, 90. Wow.
Last year.
Yeah.
Last year.
Okay, I apologize.
Okay, Brian, so a couple of things I want to point out in regards to the fund balance real quick. Going back, it's not captured on this, the state aid, one of the largest pieces of revenue for the city of Buffalo. Going back to fiscal year 2002-03, that was approximately $100 million. That actually increased between that period and 2012, and at the time, the way the BFSA Act is written is those annual increases, the first amount of any of the increase would be held by BFSA, and then the following year, that increase would be remitted directly to the city of Buffalo. So there was a combination of this revenue being held by BFSA in those years between 03 and 2012 that allowed the city to increase its fund balance. So that was part of it. Part of it was the wage freeze during that period. So you have those different factors that allowed the city to build up a bit of that fund balance that they don't have at this time. As I said, AIM's been held flat at 161.3 million since 2012. So we're going on about 13 years. So that's been done. All right, next slide is OPEB. Real quick, it's valued at 1.2 billion. Since this started being included in financial statements back in 2006, that's an increase of almost 31%. However, it's a reduction of 24% from the high of 1.6 billion in fiscal year 2010. A couple of changes on that included the discount rate, population being served, because there was contracts, a good component of it were the contracts with retiree health insurance no longer being provided for new hires. So the OPEB is future obligations. So now when they negotiated these contracts, you have new employees coming on, and if there's not going to be retiree health insurance provided to them, that was one of the factors that helped allow this amount come down over the years.
I guess this is where I put my annual objection to this table and to the Gatsby 75 rule. In general, looking out 75 years, and small changes in the discount rate can take this and either blow it up
Huge
or
numbers.
completely put it down to a tiny number. And it's just, we shouldn't be using this to maximize or minimize anything. It's really a misnomer. I think it was put there with good intention maybe, but it's really a dangerous thing to use, and my annual objection has now been stated.
You can blame all those CPAs, for this. All those
I don't
gas,
like this one either.
all those gas types.
That was Fred's way of saying move on.
Okay.
The next slide here is the solid waste and recycling fund, the annual operating income loss. We really discussed this in depth earlier. There was 3 years beginning in 2018. That was one of the times that the rates were increased. You could see where they actually had operating income those 3 years. Outside of that period, every other year was a loss. Slide, please. Staying with the solid waste and recycling fund, this is just the long-term receivable that's in the general fund we discussed. Going back to 2008, it was at 15.8 million. Now it is up to 28.3 million.
I think this slide, it's interesting, it speaks to what the county executive brought up while he was here, is this a receivable that can be paid off, or is it something that just needs to be written off? And you can
And at
see
what point
at
are
what
you supposed to write it off?
or charge interest, that's
Yeah,
another
yeah.
story. It's an interest-free loan. But you can see when they did increase rates, how big of an impact it had on that receivable over that 3-year period. So I guess I'm not as pessimistic that it will not be paid off. To me, if the city can get a rate structure in place
But
that
now,
helps.
like it has to start now.
It can't, yes, a
Yeah,
5
Because then
million
this, I mean,
year,
look,
year,
you look at what this
year.
trajectory here is. Every
More than
year,
double.
you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
do it, it's, yeah.
Absolutely. I think it can be done, but it'll be painful, but
I mean, in 3 years, it's gonna be almost $100 million.
But I think it's important.
Well, it looks like they're losing about $3 million a year.
Yeah, they're losing $3 million a year, but
On a cash basis, it's a little bit more, that's why it's a $5 million jump. OPEB gets backed out, depreciation gets backed out, so it's a little bit higher. So yeah, I think this is an opportunity that exists for the city of Buffalo, because as this receivable would be paid down, it would free money up from the committed fund balance, the unavailable fund balance down to available fund balance. And it does give an opportunity for all users in the city to contribute towards this fund. Not-for-profits are not excluded from the fee, as the county executive mentioned earlier, so I think that's really important.
Yeah, and while, you know, I often, in this capacity, try not to talk about like the programmatic side of things, you have two choices, right? Increase the user fee or cut services. I don't know if anybody's really interested in having garbage services cut. I just don't think that's probably ever gone well for anybody. So you really are left with one option, and it's, you know, right size the user fee, at least allow it to grow at the rate of the cost increases.
Right. One of the only, I think, I would say reasonable, programmatic things that we could probably do is looking at our recycling, program. We have, and actually the original
Because
incentive.
you're probably losing money on it
We
now,
are.
or where it was at least revenue neutral at some point.
Right, we are, and you could, the studies regarding plastic recycling.
It just gets dumped back into the garbage?
Yeah, so there's not a lot of return on that. So, I mean, I would still publicly say, researching how we can implement maybe every other week recycling. I know that has been proposed before, shot down by council. That would save us at least, 1.5, maybe closer now to $2 million annually. At least that helps us.
Kenmore does it now. Kenmore does it.
Yeah.
what, every
other week.
Yeah, every other week. So, I mean, I'm sure, people don't like change, but that's one thing that we could do.
All right, great.
I think
That brings me to the end of the financial statement review. I'm going to ask any other questions.
I think we've talked about this enough. Can we move on to the first quarter submission? And for those of you here, it's under tab 4 of your book. Bryce, you're up again.
All right. So we'll be reviewing, first quarter as submitted by the city. A couple of things, to look at. At the end of the first quarter, the city is projecting a 7.6 million deficit. They are going to utilize 5.5 million of restricted capital fund balance. So that deficit is actually reduced to 2.1 million.
That's for the land purchase?
That is correct. So revenues at end of first quarter are estimated to be favorable by 12.2 million. Expenditures are projected to be unfavorable by 19.8 million, and that's what gets us to the deficit of 7.6 million. And just a key factor in both revenues and expenditures is related to the ARPA program. Next schedule is just a summary of the revenues compared to the budget to first quarter. Well, as I said, 12.2 favorable at this time. Largest portion, intergovernmental, 11.6. Taxes have come in favorable by 3.1 million. That's due to prior year collections of property tax coming in this year. Unfavorable by 1 million for interest income. We discussed that earlier. Funds being held, decrease in the interest rate. And then you'll see the use of fund balance for 5.5 million. As I said, that's from the restricted fund balance for capital. Next two slides are expenditures split between departmental costs and general charges and transfers out. So the first one, budget to first quarter, they are projecting a unfavorable 9.6 million. The three departments driving that are police, fire, both at about 4.3 million, and then the mayor and executive at 4.4 million. That's where the land transfer purchase is occurring out of the mayor's office for real estate. Next slide. Going down to general charges, currently projection favorable of 800,000. And then the transfers out are unfavorable by 11 million, and that's where we get to the 19.8 million for the unfavorable between budget and end of the first quarter.
Chris, do you know, I know the state controller was looking at reducing rates for the amount that need to be paid into the pension fund. Is that included in any of this?
Not this year. For 25-26, it's actually gone up. I think it's roughly 36% for fire and police specifically. ERS is closer to the 16% range, 15, 16. I haven't heard anything about the comptroller potentially looking at reducing it, but that calculation is usually done end of March.
Right. I just didn't know if it,
But just in regards to pension for your public safety, police and fire, if the budget is 100 million, that's 36 million right there going for pension costs. This slide here is just a summary of the different points. The 12.2 million favorable to budget, 11.6 was intergovernmental, 11 million for the ARPA funds, 600,000 for sales tax. There's a 3.1 million favorable variance in taxes. 4.5 million of that is for the property tax collection, and unfavorable variance of 1.4 million due to the occupancy tax. There was a delay in implementation and rollout of that. So the city recognized it and reduced it. There was the $1 million unfavorable variance in interest and service charges, and then 600,000 unfavorable variance in fines due to loan collection. Going down to expenditures, the unfavorable variance of 19.9 can be broken down to three components: 9.6 million in the various departments, as I said, 4.4 for the mayor and executive, 4.3 for police, 4.2 for fire department. Police and fire departments really being driven by overtime in regards to that. The administration, as we spoke about variances earlier, they're not going to have the vacancies throughout the year to offset the overtime overages. The remaining 12 departments are favorable by 3.3 million. $800,000 favorable variance in general charges, favorable variances in fringe benefits and personal services, net $600,000, utilities and other net $200,000 favorable, and then transfers out is being driven, that unfavorable increase is $11 million for the ARPA, which is offset on the revenue side. And then there's the use of the 5.5 for the restricted fund balance for capital. FTE count. So budget was adopted with 2,764 positions. At the end of the first quarter, 2,385 of them were filled, 379 positions for 13.7% vacancy. Now, the budget was adopted with approximately 300 unfunded positions. Police and fire, at the end of the first quarter, there are 64 vacancies, roughly 8% of the police force, and then 68 vacancies, or 9% of the fire department.
If I remember, Bryce, those numbers were closer to 10% vacancies in past years, so that there are more filled positions both in police and fire than there have been in past years.
At this quarterly, yes.
At this
yeah.
quarter.
Yeah, that can change because sometimes when the city brings in a large class, you'll see it with the retirement, where some years will be heavier than others, where 30 years ago they might have had a class of 50, 40 of them are retiring within a year. So you'll see that.
But I have to ask, what kind of impact do you think almost 14% of your workforce being vacant is having services?
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that we've experienced, that has been highlighted more after COVID, right? And other municipalities have experienced this too, not just in the public safety sector, but in just general office departments. Even my department, staffing levels is a concern. If you were to go to any department head and ask, are they adequately staffed? Behind closed doors, they'll definitely complain and say, yeah, they're definitely staffed. So it's not a phenomenon just with Buffalo, though. Even like the U.S. Department of Labor did a study showing how private sector vacancies post-COVID have rebounded a lot more versus municipalities. Buffalo, though, that 13%, I would like to see that lower. I mean, it really should be under 10%. I think a healthy vacancy rate is.
But you budgeted for about 10%.
Yeah. And so
11%.
Yeah, so we have vacancies above and beyond the unfunded
Right.
Salaries. And so we have, I'll say, like, there's departmental needs that have been unexpected. So in the past, we would have maybe some cushion and some accounts. This budget is extremely lean. I'm going after personnel now, and I'm saying, okay, if you need $50,000, you're just not going to hire somebody. And that is not long-term, that's not sustainable. But to fix certain infrastructure needs, the building, life and safety needs, we have to just pivot and make those decisions. So,
Are you having a hard time attracting employees that come to government?
yeah.
Yeah.
Pay is an issue. Certain provisions for work from home, it's not, we're not as competitive as we used to be.
Yeah.
Years past, even when I first started, the tier system, the state pension system is less, attractive, right? I came in tier 4, tier 6 is far less attractive. I mean, there's a lot of things that are.
Well, I don't know what's being discussed at the high school or junior college or college level as to try to encourage students, once graduation, is to get into government. I don't know if they're getting, telling them to get into trades, start your own business. I mean, I don't know at what level, counselors around the high school level or college level are telling these kids to try to take a career in government, public service.
Yeah, there's a lot of needs here. I mean, we have like water service workers that of crucial titles and function in the city that I think a lot of younger students maybe would want to take up a trade or something like that. We don't have a system in place right now where we have like an apprentice program or anything like that. That maybe could be beneficial.
You did. I mean, Mayor Brown worked with my department and had 10 paid internships.
The summer.
So you used the summer money, but it was
Yeah.
done during the year, so these were undergraduates and graduate students who were gonna go into public service, and they would have an internship and work in one of the departments, to actually start to look at it, so that we're actually further ahead than a lot of cities that are doing that, but that's.
Well, I'm just a little curious as to, you know, what representation governments have at these job fairs.
We do go
So-
to some.
Yeah, I don't know, not that what you do, but what governments in general do to try to,
Yeah.
you know, encourage kids to become, you know, get involved in wanting to be in government service.
Yeah, yeah. For instance, I know, like, our mechanic
Yeah.
titles, those are very uncompetitive when you look at the private sector, right? And so our fleet manager has actually actively been going to job fairs, going out to high schools and
Good.
showing, and we're also looking at perhaps the payment structure of that, because those are, our mechanics, to repair a vehicle in-house is so much less expensive than sending it out. Our repair accounts, I mean, if you look at those Bryce knows, I mean, they are exponentially higher as far as the expenses, because we don't have the amount of mechanics, proportionally to the fleet that we used to have in the past. It's a problem. I mean,
So real quick, so one of the things I'll say, because the state has been in this situation since I got here in 2022, the governor said, hey, fill all these vacancies for me. And so one of the things that we did at the state that locals are able to take advantage of that the city of Buffalo has not taken advantage of is what we call the New York Helps Program. And so that New York Helps Program, it temporarily eliminates the need for individuals to take a civil service examination to get into entry level or open competitive type titles. And so we did it at the state level, and then we made it available to localities, to local civil service agencies to take advantage of that. And many have taken advantage of that and have reported significant gap closures in hiring rates. And so for whatever reason, the city of Buffalo has not done it, has not taken advantage of it. And that is a tool to expedite the hiring process and also remove barriers to entry, because a lot of individuals are concerned about taking a civil service examination because of stress or test anxiety, or they just don't do well on standardized tests. And so we started getting flooded with applications because of that approach. And so that is still available to the city to look at and explore.
Yeah, that's a great point. The county participated, and we filled about 170 vacancies as a result.
You just have to be careful that that's not police and fire.
Correct. And so it's not available to police and fire.
But there are some areas with police and fire, because at least from the county standpoint, and I assume the city as well, is the biggest barrier is actually the physical examination. And if you fail that, you have to start all the way at the beginning, where I know personnel at the county level has been working to give like almost like a mulligan, if you will, where you get a second chance at it and you don't have to start all the way at the beginning, and that has helped with some of the drop-off rate.
Good idea. Right?
Thank you. The next slide we have here is my internal estimate of where potential overestimated revenues for the current year. Right now, the range is between 16 and 18.5 million, and some of those components, the largest one being the casino revenue at $11 million. Previous 2 years, the state has fronted the city of Buffalo this amount. Has not occurred yet this year. I'm not sure where the conversation is and if it will occur. That is why it's included. Occupancy tax, a new revenue, city has already acknowledged at 1.4 million. They're just starting collections on that. Don't know if there's a volume of hotels within the city limits to really support that, and what other hiccups may be. A lot of vendors may not want to initially pay, maybe a little shy to pay at first, or reluctant to, I'd say. Parking meter fees range between 1.6 to 2 million. Yes, the increased rates went in. The actual collection and usage may not be at that level. Building permits, This one year to year can swing, so my estimate is between $500,000 and $1.1 million could be, overestimated. You know, it's the end of the first quarter, that one's a little hard. Traffic violations fees, they're really not issuing tickets. There's been a decrease in tickets being issued, so my range is between $500,000 to $1 million there. Parking fines, approximately $500,000, and then the rental dwelling fee is about $500,000. So as we started this conversation, we acknowledged that the budget was already unbalanced by $7.6 million. When you add in that 5.5 for the capital, that comes down to about the $2.1 million. So potentially, the revenues could be further reduced by 16 to 18.5 million. This is just my internal estimate on that.
Hey, I just want to jump in real quick. I'm sorry, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place, but it was just on my mind. And so I know that, or I believe that the Common Council approved some initiative to start getting city lots back on the tax rolls and being able to sell those. Is that the case?
Yes.
That's right. And so do we know, is there an estimated impact of what that might be to the city?
I haven't run those numbers yet. I know that they weren't projected as revenues in the
Future years.
Yeah, so.
I don't think it'll help this year. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know not this year, but do we know what that impact, what we're looking at that impact to be roughly?
Yeah, I can look at that. Long term, we can see how many.
Generally speaking, in that vein, it's not so much about revenue generation as liability reduction.
Correct.
Because you're liable, you have to do the mowing, you have to do all that. And then if you have an issue where, like, you have a tree on that parcel of land and it falls on somebody's garage or something like that, you have the liability to reduce. So that's really, it's cost avoidance more than anything else.
Can I ask a quick question regarding that? So if someone buys a property for $1,000, are they then obligated to pay whatever the assessed valuation tax is on that property?
Currently, yes, but as in finance committee yesterday, the council proposed a progressive vacant lot tax.
Okay.
And that, I mean, that's a good thing to at least explore to see.
Yeah, I
how we
mean,
can.
and obviously, Mark makes a good point too,
Yeah.
the liability.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so you wouldn't want it to be overly prohibitive if it has an incredible assessed value, but they buy it for $1,000. They might get a little remorse on that, even though it would be nice to get that extra tax.
That's a full value, the $1,000.
Latest sale.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so as I said, city administration is projecting year-end unfavorable variance of $7.6 million, which is reduced to $2.1 million when you utilize the $5.5 million reserve capital. The FSA is projected unfavorable year-end variance of between $12.6 to $15.1 million. And that calculation takes in the full receipt of the tribal state contract revenue of $11 million and the sale of the parking ramps in the amount of $26.5 million. So my unfavorable year-end variance consists of unfavorable revenue of between $5 and $7.5 million, and then the fire and police overtime in excess of what the city's current estimates are. And that's a net overage of between $2 and $5 million. So, as a reminder, there is no unassigned or assigned fund balance available at June 30, 2025, and the remaining balance of $42.3 million in the rainy day.
So we've got a number of numbers there.
Yes.
The city's projecting a $2.1 million deficit. Price is projecting somewhere between $7 and $12.9 million deficit. Significant difference. The mayor earlier said that the $2.1 million deficit would be wiped out by the end of the year. We wouldn't have any deficit.
So how do we explain that?
Well, because it's the first quarter and, you know, you have a huge variation there.
all
Me too, Tim.
Hey, I don't know if you guys can hear us. There's a feedback or something that the online folks are getting, and we can't hear you.
requested funding of $38.5 million. Unlike in previous years, this request for the funding is 100% of current year projects. Does not include any prior year authorized and unissued projects in the request amount. So going down here, amount of authorized but unissued projects are estimated at $42.3 million. That can be split into two buckets. There's $15.6 million of prior years from fiscal year 26 through 24 that was authorized and unissued. And then there's $26.7 million from fiscal year 25 authorized and unissued, which is currently being litigated. And then the other component of it is what we call the budgeted and unauthorized. That totals $53.4 million, and those are all projects that were introduced in the 2025 capital budget. So there were no bond resolutions at that time drafted or approved for those projects.
So I guess I'd like to know the sense of the board to some extent is, would we like to look at a proposal for capital borrowing going forward? We've gotten information from the comptroller, but it does seem to me as the control board that we should have some kind of policy or proposal to go forward.
Mhm.
I'm just wondering what the board's opinion is.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically the reimbursable should not be subject to the cap.
So
Should
that
at least
could
be
be,
considered.
I mean,
I don't know who makes that final determination. It sort of seems as though that the rules regarding this cap are entirely within the comptroller's office, and this is not really a product of the administration, the common council, or anyone else. So but I think a sense of the board, I mean, I understand the point of the debt cap, so it should still serve that point, and dollars that are 100% reimbursable don't cause fiscal strain, so they should be excluded. That would be my sense.
anyone else?
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, I would even go.
But do you agree?
I would go.
I would agree with that.
Go that far, huh?
I would go even a little bit further, and I think that there actually need to be three buckets that we look at. One is what we just talked about, those that are fully reimbursable, whether they're from the school district or the city, shouldn't be counted as the cap. But then the rest of it should probably be split into two parts. One, which is continuing capital maintenance, so if we're thinking of.
Can I just
Yeah.
interrupt with, I think it's all based on the timing of the reimbursements. So in other words, if you got reimbursable bonds that are issued, the amortization should tie into how long, what the term is for reimbursing the project.
Right.
All right? You know, so
Yeah.
you tie that into the amount of debt service you're gonna pay based upon, when the reimbursements will be coming, okay?
Yeah, or expected.
Or expected.
Expected reimbursements.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I mean,
it's more of a cash flow concern, right?
It's
I
a
mean, you
cash
have to
flow
have the-
concern that
yeah.
we've got to deal with, and how much you would then have to borrow for cash flow. But it does seem to me that the way the capital budget is split up for the rest of it is that we know there are annual capital budget replacement things that we should be doing every year. There should be a schedule of capital items that we know, whether they're police cars.
Recurring needs.
Yeah, things that are normal, everything. And so there should be, you know, basically a three-bucket capital budget, one for reimbursables, one for that, and then one for other projects that may be good or whatever, but they're in the third.
You know, and this comment maybe get into the weeds a little bit, but the guarantees of the source of the reimbursement. Okay? Like, you know, I don't know if anybody can predict whether or not certain projects are reimbursable by the federal government right now, or if the state would reimburse us based on whatever funds they get from the federal government. So I think there, you know, like I said, this is probably into the weeds a little bit.
Yeah.
However, you know, what guarantees are we gonna have that these bond projects are gonna be reimbursed?
And I think that's a good point, but I think we need a policy that's a longer-term policy. I think we gotta recommend a long-term policy, not a policy for this year or next year, just for this year or next year, I guess.
Yeah, no, I know,
If you know what I mean, where I would expect that the federal and the state government would be, if they're not reliable, then nobody's reliable.
well, that's right. Well,
And
from
the whole
from a general standpoint,
Yeah.
I certainly agree with Mark. You know, if there's reimbursable bond projects out
Right.
there, there's no question we should be.
And look, when you have reimbursable projects or grants or anything, there is an assumption of risk.
Yeah.
It's usually considered a small assumption of risk, but it
Yeah.
would not be, you know, obviously there's more chaos now than there has been in the past.
Well, that's why I said,
Right.
this is more of an into the weeds,
But that's why I think you also need 3 buckets.
yeah.
So
No, no.
that third bucket, maybe you are a little more careful with that, and you don't
I agree.
hit the limit on that third one. But I would think that maybe we could, if the board agrees, we should think about putting that policy down in writing and maybe approve it at another board meeting, if that's
I like that
okay.
even better than Mark's.
Okay. Thank you.
What do you say?
He said he liked it better than Mark.
Oh.
So if I see no objection, I think that's something that I can work with Jeanette and Bryce on, that we might come back with
But
something.
clarification on the recurring needs and the, what is this other category?
I'm saying-
Wants?
Well, you may have large projects that may be very beneficial, and you still have room under your cap that maybe we want to be able to do. So, I don't know, maybe maybe there would be a subway or some, we're never going to do that, but, you know, maybe there would be some large project that would be very beneficial from a cost-benefit study for the city. You know, maybe those go to the end of it, but you got to fix your day-to-day before you do your big fancy projects that you might want to do. That makes sense, in my mind, I'm thinking about
My only concern with that is,
it.
isn't that, that's a process that should be undertaken, right?
Right.
But isn't that the job of the administration and the common council to make those priorities?
But it does seem,
CAC.
we would do that, I think our recommendation is that
Yeah,
they
because I wouldn't
allocate-
want us to be getting in the weeds
No.
and picking and choosing
No, I agree.
winners and
I don't know.
losers of
We're not-
projects, where we don't have the wherewithal.
Something that's really.
What we're asking
Like
them for,
official.
what we're telling them they need to put in a policy. We're recommending 3 tranches. There, you know, here are the 3 we are looking at. And then, then on a year-to-year basis, they've got to put them in the right places, and, you know, the comptroller and the finance director have to work.
Isn't the bigger question that those tranches 2 and 3, whether or not they need to comply with the controller's limit, or whether or not they're allowed to
And-
exceed it?
That's gonna go out with the court case too, when we finally get that all settled.
Well, no, I mean.
Yeah.
It's still, that's last year.
Yeah.
But the question still comes up this year. The difference between last year and this year, as I see it, is last year, 110 million seemed to be a matter of the mayor basically complying with the controller's $28 million, but then adding on 2 groups of reimbursables, city and school. This year, the 94 million is the 55 million for the school and 38 million for the city with no mention of reimbursables.
Right.
So this year they're exceeding.
Right.
the cap.
Genuinely exceeding, yes.
Generally.
Right, not counting reimbursement.
Yeah.
And to split up the essential recurring needs and the discretionary or wants or enhancement type programs, I'm not sure if it makes any difference, because the real question is, what's the total going to be?
Right. The problem, I think, is that we have, most capital budgets will have a recurring part that's carved out so that you don't get yourself into problems with your recurring capital needs, and you can forecast those out better than other projects. So I'm just thinking of good capital budgeting would say that you need to take recurring and make that its own separate category, in my mind.
You can't budget for recurring and general fund budget?
Well, the question is, let's say you're using an automobile for 5 years. Well, the appropriate, at least from if I'm teaching my kids finance, the appropriate thing is to buy that out for 5 years, because that's got a 5-year use. And you wouldn't put everything into the operating budget, because at that point, you would be suboptimal on buying things.
Yeah, you're overextending.
And you've overextended, and you're cutting other things. So the question is, when is the capital being used? And then from a public sector standpoint, people that are paying taxes, if you're here for the first 2 years, but you're not here for the last 3 years, you've paid for the 5 years, there's an equity question floating around in that as well. You know, I don't want to go into more of the, you know, we can go into class, but I'm just thinking that we need to look at it and make a recommendation that they need to put together some way of looking at recurring that are appropriately budgeted, right? We're not saying take things that are obviously operating budgets and put them in the capital budget. That's not the point. The point is, if you have short-term and medium-term capital, that you need to appropriately allocate it in a budget process so that you can then plan appropriately. You can then decide, well, this year I don't have any money in the operating budget. We don't buy any police cars. All of a sudden, my cost for fixing police cars goes through the roof. That's a problem. And I think we've gotten ourselves into those kinds of problems way too often, looking at what gets funded out, when we use it. Let's use our capital in an appropriate time frame and use frame as we go through. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think we were good with it until you said, till you started mentioning prioritizing, and so I think that's when Mark jumped in as far as that. But, yeah. No, we're. I think we're good.
Yeah. If I use that, I apologize. I didn't mean to say that we should prioritize. I was just saying we should say they need a process or a policy, whatever we're going to call it, to be able to help them move this along and to get out of some of the problems there. That's all. Bryce?
All right, thank you. Moving on to slide 38. Slide 38 and 39 is a breakout by department or use of the capital budget. So first one, project in the 2026 adopted capital budget, total 38.5. We have it broken out to engineering. A lot of it's your streetscaping, your infrastructure, parks, buildings. So out of 38.5 million, approximately 25 million of that is going for public works work, be it in city-owned buildings, streetscaping, Department of Public Works vehicles, or the parks themselves. Fire departments, 5.2 million, that's a combination of vehicles and maintenance or improvements at different fire halls. Police department, similar. There's a component there for vehicles as well as the different police districts improvements. Cultural organizations, 2.5 million. That includes the public art component, and then 1.6 between the tree removal and the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So this pie chart kind of regroups things more to infrastructure, city-owned buildings. I moved all the vehicles and safety equipment over, so everything from public works, parks, police and fire, that's about 9.5 million in vehicles that they're looking at borrowing for this coming year. Investment in parks is at 7.1 million, 18%. Buildings, 9.6 million. Those are two different ways to look at it, and that's why it was broken up in that way. Next slide, please. The next two slides are going to focus on the school district. So this first slide on page 40, that totals 55.6 million. This is the 55.6 that was included in this year's capital budget and approved by the council last week. And the next slide is the summary of the budgeted but unauthorized projects. This is at $33.5 million that the city did not borrow for on behalf of the district last year. And, the resolutions were not drafted for these, so they're budgeted unauthorized at this time.
Status of those now?
Those resolutions, not,
Jim?
Yeah. Everything but Buckham Hall, either has or will have state approval, aid calculations, ready to go like within a couple of weeks. So they would have satisfied all the necessary steps for bonding at this time. Buckham Hall is not ready.
You know when it will be?
We're hoping for, beginning of the second quarter, beginning of our fourth quarter in 26.
And Jim, it's understood that once these projects are authorized, that the 97% reimbursement figure is certain?
Yes. Yes, everything but Buckham Hall's different. Buckham Hall will be a new facility for students. Therefore, its aid is calculated differently. The actual cost right now of the Buckham Hall project is $50 million. The state calculates new construction based upon a maximum cost allowance, amount of space dedicated to children, dedicated to learning. So that came out at $24 million. We put aside $25 million as an assignment in our fund balance to cover the difference. But all the other projects are just like those processed in the prior year. They're 97% reimbursable.
But Buckham Hall is 50% thus far?
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
all right, slides please. Slide 42 here, these are the capital borrowing levels going back to 2020. You see in 2020, the city issued a ban in the amount of $34.8 million. They included some of the 2019 ban. Those both portions got rolled into the 2021 issuance. I believe of that, about $12.8 million was from 2020, and then $20 million, a little less than $20 million was from 2019. Those two bans both got rolled into 2021, where you see that $51.7 million. 2025, you'll see it split. The blue is the district, where the $22 million was issued for the ban. $7.4 million were the three projects that were issued on behalf of the city. That's where we get the $29.4 million for the full ban. And then the $38.5 million is only reflective of the city piece at this time. You'd add another $55.6 million on that to reflect the district, which I didn't do at this time because I was really just trying to focus on the city piece. And that's why 2025 has the two colors there.
Right.
Can I ask a question about this slide in that I don't know what the comptroller's debt cap historically has been, but it sure seems like 2021 probably exceeded it. So why was that allowed to happen?
It was a roll forward.
Okay, so that was like 2 years of that cap or three? Okay.
2019 ban, 2020 ban, and then the actual issuance for 2021.
Okay, but this one
has
doesn't
nothing.
show three components here. It says net. Okay, but all the other ones were broken out between bands.
That was the only year. 2025 was a little different because it should only be green. Only, but I'm showing
previous ban.
showing the district in that component. That's why it's like that. Prior to 2020, you had 2 years of bans, so you would have seen more of those bans, and then those years were rolled into 2021.
I see.
Historically, the comptroller's cap was between 25 and 26 million.
Okay.
Would be nice if it was broken down, the 2021.
Yeah, I mean, that just seems like an incredible outlier.
Right, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we've got this.
So the reason I think
during the COVID years, I think we scaled it back because the market was going a little haywire at that point, so that's why we initially issued a ban, and then I think we rolled it in, if I remember correctly, into following year. That's why it's a larger amount, and we have the other projects that we didn't do in the prior year.
Okay.
Ray, am I correct? It looked to me like in the projects that were included in the 38.5 million, there were a number of them that were previously listed in earlier years that were either budgeted, not authorized, or authorized, not funded. Will those be rescinded and now they're included in here, or are we doubling up on those?
Those are subsequent phases of the same projects. So, if you see something that has a similar listing from 2025, all the 2026 ones assumes that the 2025, funding will still come in.
So it is in addition to.
Yes, that is in addition.
The secondary phase.
Correct, correct.
The two of those, I think, specifically are under culturals
Yeah.
for Shays and the Buffalo Zoo, where you saw allocations of the authorized in 2025, and now it's phase two.
So it is new money, it's not
Yes.
replacing previously.
Right, next slide. Slide 43, what we're looking at here is capital borrowing proceeds remaining by issuance as of October 31st, city only. So at this time, it's a total of 23.9 million. Just going back to 2018. So that's kind of in line with where they were last year. They're usually between 20, 24 million in unspent proceeds about this time of year. Next slide, please. All right. A little bit more on ARPA. Capital budget and capital improvement plans excludes ARPA recovery funds. The city has approved about approximately 94.5 million for various capital investments. There's a remaining allocation of about 20 million as of November 1st for those projects. All the projects have been obligated and they're to be dispersed by December 31st, 2026. Administration is currently reviewing projects, determine if they'll meet the disbursement deadline, if the resources need to be potentially reallocated. There's been a conversation ongoing with council as well. Slide, please. And this is just a summary of going back to 2022, where some of these funds have been allocated and where they expect to go. The proposed 2026 is really, it's a combination of actual expenditures as well as.
I'm on a call, but yeah.
I was calling about that meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
So significantly, there are investments in Genevieve Wiley Park, as well as Shoshone Sports Complex and the community centers. Next slide. What we had here is comparing a couple different pieces from different documents. Over the 5 years, next 5 years, the first line is debt service through the general fund that's included in the city's financial plan. So current year, it's 36.2 million, and it goes down to 27.2 by fiscal year 29. The line below that is the comptroller's cap over the next 5 years, and this is from the estimated report. 28, 29, 29, 34, then 36 million. And the third line there is the 2027-2030 CIP allocation that was included. So current year is 94.1 million. That's made up of the two components, 38.5 for the city, 55.6 for the district. And it's only the city amount going out the remaining 4 years. The district did not complete a 5-year plan to have their amount included in at this time. That is going to be one of our recommendations. Slide.
Okay.
So 55.6 million included for the district. There was a ban in the amount of 21.95 million for district in September 2025. There was 33.5 million budgeted unauthorized, which we just saw on a previous schedule. Bonding for ongoing general operations is included. There's $1 million for the tree removal and planting. Uses limited resources, 2.6 in the current year, 4.4 million over the remaining 5 years. Demolitions were not included in this year, but over the 5-year CIP program, its total is 8.6 million. Next slide, please. The FSA continues to recommend that a funding plan be established to determine when those projects that have been approved and not currently funded may proceed. Projects totaling 42.3 million has been approved with no funding identified over the next 5 years. 26.6 million is part of the 2025 capital budget that's currently being litigated. 15.7 of that is from the period of 2016 and 2024. Now, the budgeted but unauthorized amount is 53.4 million. 33.5 million of that are in district projects. And actually, if you back out Buckham Hall, that drops it down to about 8.5 million. And then there's the 19.9 million in authorized and unissued budgeted but unauthorized city projects. The FSA continues to recommend tree trimming planning be moved back to the general fund as part of long-term planning. Administration should look at moving certain capital expenses to general fund, including vehicles, the tree planting, and that the district should develop a 5-year capital plan. Slide, please.
Before we move,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that I agree with the FSA recommending the tree trimming and planting being moved to the general fund. I think those are recurring costs. I think they're substantial recurring costs. And if we move them to the general fund, we just increase that projected deficit each year. I mean, any reason those items as opposed to police cars or fire trucks or anything else?
The reason for that specifically is that it's an ongoing annual process. There's always about $1 million in demolition that are expended, $1 million or so for tree planting and tree trimming. So we were viewing it in terms of there's such a limited capacity for borrowing under the debt cap that utilizing, well, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head, but it was over 5% of the, I'd say around 5% of the cap was just for these two annual recurring type of expenses. Now, that doesn't mean the city is precluded from borrowing. It is a allowable bonded item under general municipal law and tax law. But because it's always going to be expended, we sought to increase capacity under the debt cap to move those gradually back into general operation. This is not the time for it now. We've been making this recommendation for probably
15 years.
Yeah, it's an annual recommendation. Andy has disagreed with it.
I agree with you, Tom, but given the fact that the city's budget is working off of major deficits, you know, we say, yeah, that's what they should do, but then we don't identify any funding to pay for it out of the city's general fund.
Well, you're either
It's pick your poison.
You're either paying for it out of your general
No.
fund, or you're paying for it out of.
Yeah, but at least you're paying it over time.
You're still paying it, but now you're paying for it with interest instead of.
Well, what's the difference between that and police cars or anything?
So I
else?
don't want to interrupt the discussion, but the district has to go to a board meeting at 4 p.m. So I don't know if we want to hear.
That would probably be a good thing. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Just to summarize what Jeanette was saying there, and this is really something I was thinking, you can identify between 5 to 6 million that's reoccurring each year up against that cap, be it police vehicles, fire trucks, the trees, and the demolitions. And the way I'm looking at it, if they can move that to the general fund, that frees up that 5 to 6 million for infrastructure, buildings, some of those other projects. So
But that depends on the cap. So depending on what we recommend and talk about what we've talked about before, I think we can maybe put together all of these things in a better proposal. So why don't we move on and we'll come back to that? If that's okay with everyone? Yep. Try to push together. Okay, so if we can jump over a couple of things and move to the school district. Are we ready?
Slide 51 for the district, if you're tracking.
Slide 51. Just trying to. Nathan, do you want to?
Sure.
Take us?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. The following is a review of BFSA's analysis of the district's first quarter financial results. Start with the introduction. The 25-26 fiscal year will very likely conclude with an operating deficit. That's point number one. Neither the BFSA nor the district projects any significant overall budget variances after the first quarter. Typically, only about 10% of revenues are received at that point, and 17% of expenditures are out. So it's way too early to predict fiscal year-end variances. District has performed a series of budget transfers to modify the budget, just tweaks here and there as needed. And after the second quarter, BFSA will issue a current fiscal year-end forecast to give a better idea of where we think we will end. We just discussed this at a previous meeting, but the 24-25 fiscal year marked the first operating deficit since fiscal year end 2017. An additional $78.8 million operating deficit is currently forecast for the current fiscal year. Consecutive annual deficits are indicative of a systemic issue and a structural imbalance. Very briefly, we have a slight forecast for revenues. Revenues were forecast by the district to be at budget at $1,107.7 million. BFSA can do a slight forecast for Erie County sales tax of an additional $1.5 million, just based on receipts to date and prior year. We're saying that it'll be at least what it was last year.
Could be more.
Yeah.
We're growing at 4.3% year to date.
Right. Expenditures, no disagreement between the district and the FSA. Again, budget modifications were made between the various categories to update the budget. The transfers reflect the district's current fiscal year projections. About a year ago, we did report that there were early indications that the district would either see flat enrollment or possibly even a slight increase. That did occur. District enrollment went up for the first time in several years, albeit by not a large amount, but it is a positive sign. And again, the same situation as after the first quarter. It's a little bit higher than what had been budgeted. So there's a potential that they could have 2 school years in a row where enrollment is either flat or increasing by a little bit. And then just to conclude, there's no concerns related to the district's projections for the year. District demonstrated the ability to fund the projected deficits with revenues and will likely report a budgetary surplus once we know where the positions are at, which ones are filled, which ones are vacant, be able to probably see some vacancy savings there. And again, we are forecasting a slight revenue variance within sales tax.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
For Jim. Looking at the enrollment numbers, Jim, obviously the charter schools increased, the city schools increased. What do you attribute that to? Are there more people moving into this city, or where's that enrollment coming from?
I was expecting this question from you, Andy, and I don't have a great answer prepared. These beds numbers will be adjusted a little bit lower, but it will be 2 years of 100 to 200 student increase. And I don't have that answer right now. We are all trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Is it an influx of new Americans?
Yeah, that's been a trend for the last 3 or 4 years.
And it looks like in the trends, because I've looked at the data, that this is going to continue for another 2 to 3 years, and then it seems to slow down. So I think it's just population growth, more from the people that are here, as we look at it, that there are just more children under this cohort that's having children right now.
Is there a comparable decrease in private schools? Yeah,
Good question.
That's a good question,
Maybe
but
more expensive.
I was looking at everybody, so the growth was for everybody, public and private, but, you know, it's a good question to.
You know, and Jim, you don't have the answer to this, but do you believe or do you feel that there are families out there that may be concerned about ICE deportations?
Oh, that is a concern. We've had to develop policies. We've had several incidences. Oh, yes.
Okay.
So I guess my are you done, Andy?
Yeah, no, I'm done.
Okay. Is there a sweet spot for the district as far as student enrollment? Like the capacity that you believe that is appropriate for you to effectively handle?
Truly, we have capacity in K through 12. We can handle additional kids in every grade.
Okay.
Jim, the district is currently at about 50% capacity, correct? The build out to be about,
Oh,
give or
yeah,
take,
related to the building capacity, yes, yeah.
and then
But
you're
do we have
closing.
capacity?
Pardon? Yes, we have classroom space.
You can handle.
And we have the appropriate staffing to be able to account for that 50%?
No, that 50% numbers just shows that our district used to have 36,000 kids, and they built these monstrous buildings, and now we're, 29,000. But regarding it would depend upon the increase. But right now we can absorb 200 kids with no problem within the existing classrooms and teachers.
So I know you have to go soon. So may I ask what that new proposed building is?
It's for Da Vinci High School, which has a special charter, so to speak, to be attached to in a university setting. It was at Madai. I think it was Madai, and there was they grew in wanted us out, so we were looking for another university site.
Okay.
That
It was actually D'Youville. Yeah.
D'Youville, sorry, D'Youville.
No problem. So Buff State is now working on getting ready for the Da Vinci students to come to Buff State.
Yes, but there's no lease signed.
Right.
There's several steps that are still in progress, hopefully nearing the end, but yep.
So Jim, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, my presentation tonight will, just so you know, we'll touch on the bullet points in the executive summary of my quarterly report, but then really try to get the board focused on our right-sizing programs to reduce the deficit. The goal this year is to cut $47 million off of that deficit to hit our 4-year plan goal. I'm going to try to get them to clearly see if we don't, we run precariously low in cash and we'd have a negative unassigned fund balance. But if we follow the plan, we'll be fine.
So that's building closings and moving people out of the central office.
Yep, and then there was a program called Virtual Pathways that'll be eliminated. Right.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
You're pretty confident in that direction?
The superintendent's moving pretty forcefully toward that. We got a board resolution to close virtual pathways, June 30th. Tomorrow should be one of the final school closing committee meetings where that committee, appointed by the board, should give us the names of the two schools. And he's already working on reducing 100 FTEs from the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions for
I'm good.
John? Thank you, Jim. I know that you've got to go to another meeting. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
Hopefully everything will work well and we'll have a nice budget, balanced budget.
I wore like a raincoat. I expect like fruits and vegetables to be thrown at me. Thank you,
We're
guys.
used to it, Jim.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
At least there's
Here, Jim.
stairs on the fruit.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you. So Nathan, did you cover everything? I didn't mean to step on you.
No.
Jeanette, do you have any more?
No, I have nothing else to comment on.
Okay.
This first quarter.
Then we'll move back to our next item, which is to discuss with Commissioner Noseworthy, the ARPA reports and where you are and all of that.
All right. But it's not on the slide. That's gonna be in your board book, right before tab 5.
Okay, it's not the ARPA discussion.
No.
No, it's just, yeah, those,
Where are you going to?
The ARPA.
so there's that schedule, yep.
Okay.
Quarterly. Yes, during the 3-month reporting period from July to September 2025, over $18.6 million was spent on already obligated ARPA projects. So a total of $293.6 million, or 89% of the ARPA funding, has been used as of the end of September. So that we've already gone over 90% if you count year to date. So in July, it was about 5.2 million. August, it went up to 6. September, we got almost $7.5 million out the door. Again, the administration is really trying to expedite the process when we get the payment request in and get that turned over for payments. So again, with the payment deadline being December 2026, the goal is still to have everything fully expended. Let's just say 99% spent by the fall. That's what I've been continuing to strive for. So,
So do you have a person in charge of each of these projects that's making sure that, particularly the community groups and others that may not be as sophisticated in how all this has to happen, is there not just, filling out the paperwork on our end, but actually sitting down with them and making sure that they will do the right thing?
yeah, so we've cleaned up the process greatly, because a lot of the organizations, this is like their first real endeavor of getting these type of reimbursements or being subrecipients of something like this. So we developed a standardized form, a payment request form that all the organizations now have. So they fill it out with their backup information, they submit it to us. It's a form that was also pre-approved by the audit department. And so we really have done a lot of work to streamline that, to make it easier for the subrecipients, and it's been working out really well for some months now. So the Treasury reporting period ends, the full annual reporting period ends in this month, in December. So the goal was always to do a evaluation as well as to where all these subrecipients are in their milestones, the programmatic milestones, spending milestones. So we've already had every project manager reach out to the organizations and get a feel as to what the concerns are with spending, because we have a small handful of organizations that are a bit behind in those milestones. So if that continues to be a concern going into January, we are going to look at reobligating, I should say reappropriating the money to already obligated programs, which is something allowable.
You can do that.
Yes, that we can do. We just can't create new, contracts or programs. So that is something that's currently underway. I know the Common Council is very interested in that, but the goal is to make sure everything is spent by the fall, so. Question on that.
And you're pretty confident?
That sort of, I'll let.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was gonna say, so
We didn't hear you, Tim.
yep, you seem pretty confident, and you said we're at the 90 and getting pretty close to 100%.
Yeah, I mean, we have about 30-something million.
35
Yeah,
million.
30 left to spend, and we've spent 19 million in Q4 or Q1 of the reporting period, and so Q2 now, or I think this is where are we in? Q3, I'm sorry, this was Q3. In Q2, we've got over 19 million. Q3, we got over 18 million. So we are on trend to fully expend that 30 plus million. A lot of and the way we structure the agreements as well, the organizations, without council approval, can reappropriate within their already established budgets within the contract. The contracts say that they can't do that as long as they get written approval from me, which has also helped speed up a lot of the spending. So, yeah, well, I personally feel confident that the city can fully expend it. You know, is it going to be down to the penny? We'll see. But I want every single dollar.
And you said it has to be done by when?
December 2026. But the goal is to be like closer to the fall, get the majority of that spent, because there's going to be some cleanup. I can't have payment requests coming in the last week of December. That's just not going to work for us.
I guess the question is, and so to Fred's question, as far as how you guys are managing it, how do you see in the transition of administrations that this is that we can make sure we're successful?
Yeah, so I mean, the Scanlon administration is already talking to the mayor-elect's team on certain priorities. I have also had a conversation even with like Chuck Schumer's office. There's going to be like some carryover as far as notes and suggestions and protocols on how things are being done. So my suggestion would be to carry out those things, and hopefully, you know, the next administration can.
Okay, now your discussions with the next administration, do you have somewhat of an idea as to who you're going to be dealing with to help move on these projects? Has there been any whispers about who's going to take over these positions, or whether it's public works, you know, or finance, or?
I don't know.
No, I didn't know. I didn't know if they assigned, when whoever you're talking to, I didn't know if they kind of assigned or gave you an idea as to the prospects of who may be responsible for handling this.
No, but as far as my immediate team in office, we have a lot of notes on processes, procedures, as it pertains to the budget, reporting, a lot. I have my analysts there having notes.
So who on the transition team attends these meetings? For the new administration? I mean,
I guess it depends. Yeah, it depends on.
Yeah, they have different segments of, you know.
Right.
And I didn't know who specifically on the transition team that you're meeting with regarding this conflict.
Well, as far as the ARPA topic is concerned, I haven't explicitly spoken to anybody about that yet.
Okay.
But I have notes prepared to make sure, you know, to hand off and make sure that
All right,
they have.
we can follow up too, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that would be a priority, obviously, for the new administration.
Mark?
Oh, yeah, my only question was, do you have some sort of, like, drop dead deadline in mind for determining whether any of these, projects are not going to be fully expended? And then, if so, is that being communicated, you know, to those parties? And then the third part would be, do you have then sort of other areas where you believe you can spend the money within, you know, ARPA overlay to do the, you know, vaunted reclassification of an existing obligation that, you know, you can find a way to spend those dollars appropriately?
Yeah, so right now we don't have like a one-to-one, you know, like $200,000.
Yeah, but you probably have
But
some
we have
canned
some, yeah.
ideas, like, ready to go that
Absolutely.
you didn't anticipate on the front end, but
Absolutely.
you can still use it, because the worst thing would be, you know, outside of like minor recording errors,
Yeah.
is giving any of that.
Yeah, so we're already underway, we're getting that data now. So the data cutoff is gonna be December, at the end of December. But then we're going to engage in conversation. We don't wanna just pull a rug from the recipients and not give them a chance to really, work with us. Cause the last thing I wanna do is really take the money from them. So, we'll determine that, but that'll be something that'll happen in January, or should happen.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, I'm in the same boat where there are like 2 projects that I have a little bit of concern that's starting to grow a little bit. And I'm gonna make those folks very aware that they have to start showing some movement,
Yeah.
or the money's gonna disappear.
Yeah, so we were already engaged that, with the.
That's good. I think, we're getting late, so why don't I move on? Can you give us an update on the parking?
Parking authority, yeah, and I know I did promise a written, timeline, I did, and I talked to Janet about this. I thought that the board would have at least had one meeting to really establish that by now. But with all that said, the appraisal is actually going to be finalized this month. And so once that information is available, we have already had offline conversations with, bond counsel and our financial, manager. It is about a 4 to 6 month process and 6 months is really, lengthy based off of our internal conversations. So the timing really should come in well within, before the June time period. There's been no, concern from any experts that we've spoken to that can't be accomplished, especially when the appraisal's gonna be coming in, this month.
I might not have been clear on what I was requesting, but what I was requesting, really the role of the new authority, much as it would be your role as Commissioner of Finance, putting it in the budget. All I'm really looking for is what things need to be done. So we've talked about title and survey and appraisal. Then, in order to issue the bond, you gotta have bond counsel review. I don't know all the
Underwriting and
steps.
everything. Neither do I. That's why this is a great process for me too. So, I'll be very, very candid about that.
That's the best time to learn on the job.
No. Well, that's why we have a team, right? So I know how that can be implemented within our budget, right? But when it comes to the underwriting and the cap use and everything like that, we have our financial experts that we've spoken to. They know what our timeline is. So that particular, concern, I guess you're asking for a punch list of items, which we're still.
Yeah, and then to the extent that you can, how long would it take to accomplish those?
Yeah, and the answer to that question, it should really be no longer than 6 months from when we get the appraisal. That's been the large, I mean,
And
6
when
months
is
is
the
really
appraisal?
long. The middle of this month, so pretty much within the next couple of weeks.
So when you get out to 6 months, you're
We're right there,
Cutting
I
it
know,
close.
but this 6 months has always been like it's 4 to 6 months. So we're doing a lot of things at the same time simultaneously, running as fast as we can with this, so. Yeah, but internally, there's still a lot of confidence, even within the entities that we talk to, for the experts in this.
Well, and I guess we have to have, from our perspective, a timeline that says if nothing's happened by March, that we're gonna have to step in and say something appropriate at the time. I don't know what that is, but I think we need to watch it so that it doesn't flip into next year, and all of a sudden we miss a year where you've got a extra $26 million hole in your budget unanticipated, much like the legal settlements. And then what are we gonna do? Because now we're gonna run out of rainy day funds as well if this doesn't come through. So we've got to really think about it.
Right, and that's why the gap closing plan was requested.
Mhm.
And so, we'll know by that time, I mean, if the timing on things is not lining up. So we'll know well before June, and then can pivot to that plan. Right now, it doesn't seem like that would be the case, but we'll.
maybe if you just provided a schedule of the steps you do know have to take place.
Yeah.
That even would be helpful.
Yeah, like, when do you foresee the, like, formative board meeting where, you know, you're approving all your bylaws and so on and so forth?
Yeah, that'll be this month. So
Okay,
that,
so,
yeah, we
well,
have,
that's good.
we're looking at, So,
Okay. You've already filed your articles of
Yes,
incorporation?
with the state, so everything so that's done. We just have to actually formally meet to get those bylaws written. Our corporation.
Kind of like the Big Bang. Nothing
Yeah.
exists and then it all exists.
Yeah, and so, our
Formative
procurement policy, we have to get into an agreement with those, because the board needs to actually procure a lot of these services, right? The city's doing it right now, and will be partially reimbursed for like title survey and things like that. And so,
Right, is it being worked on by your law department or by the city's bond council?
the law department right now is bearing the brunt of a lot of that work. Bond counsel, we've gotten some tentative information from them, but bond counsel needs to formally be procured by the board. So that's why it's gonna be very important that we meet and get those things together.
And that's a good example of the things that need to be done. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What things need.
Yeah, that punch list is still being I've been,
Why don't we work
Yeah.
with the commissioner to put together, I think now that we understand a little bit more, why don't we work together and get you, the information that you want, and maybe.
Yeah, if it's missing pieces because you don't know, okay, if we get
that's what
90% of it or 80% of it or whatever.
I wanna give you something proper and complete. That's how I am.
It's good.
Take what you have
We
so far.
appreciate it. Are there any more questions for Ray? I know we're
So
running
just
out
a
of
quick,
time.
yep, just a quick thing. So if we are able to satisfy Tom's question, if you are in conversation with the experts, they could also provide that information as far as the punch list that you're not aware of. To so that we know, right?
So we'll work with Ray to try to get all of that put together for you in the next little bit. I'm gonna ask that we sort of move, we've had a long, I think, wonderful meeting. I think this is the kind of thing that had to happen, so I appreciate it. There's one more thing we have to do before we leave, and that we have to talk about, the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency's, financial audits and vote on the resolution and that such. Bryce, can you give us a 3-minute overview of it, or?
Will do. So if you were following on PowerPoint, slide 58, Bureau closed the year out, total fund balance of 10.8 million, 9.9 million of that's within the general fund, 5.9 million non-spendable, 4 million unassigned. They increased year to year by 262,000. CDBG fund, 70,000 non-spendable. Next slide, please. So expenditures year to year have increased. Federal grant expenditures, 98, almost 99% of total expenditures, total 62.7 million. 52.3 million of that was for Section 8 housing. CDBG expenditures total 6.3 million, home at 3 million. And then the CDBG CV, that's the CARES funding during COVID, was less than 200,000. Next slide. There's a year-to-year increase in federal grant revenue of 1.3 million. CDBG decreased by 1.7. CARES funding decreased by 1.8. Section 8 housing increased by 5.1 million. That was the cost driver year to year there, or revenue generator. Home program decreased by $1 million, and non-major funds increased by 700,000. Next slide, please. Net increase of 2 million in public service and human service programs. Section 8, 5.1 million there, and the CDBG decreased by 3 million. So that's taking the net effect. Rehabilitation and preservation activities increased by almost 600,000. A lot of that was under CDBG. They increased by 1.1 million. Home decreased by 900,000. All other non-major funds and general fund increased by 340,000 on a net basis. there was a year-to-year decrease of 1.6 million for planning, management, admin, and economic development activities. CARES funding decreased by 1.7 million year-to-year. There was an increase of 200,000 for CDBG. Sorry, nope, that's fine. Non-major funds increased by 200,000, and general fund all other decreased by 300,000. Next slide is just OPEB.
Don't even bother.
Nope.
Yeah.
We're not on that.
My objection noted.
So, there were, during the audit process, there was some commentary in regards some of, operations. Bureau is not fully staffed. There's some capacity issues where there's individuals having to do the journal entry and then reviewing it themselves. So that's where the segregation of duties comes in. Utilizing the financial accounting system capabilities, instead of using Munis, things are coming offline and through an Excel write-off for the loan write-off procedures, and then the inactive funds. There's a couple of funds that have had no activity in the last 2 years, so the recommendation is for a policy to close them out. I went through that rather quickly on the financial statements. Is there any?
So are you recommending that they need to hire additional staff to make sure that they're able to do this?
They're trying. They actually, for example, let me take a step back. They have identified they are having capacity issues. They're struggling filling the positions, especially accountant positions. Currently, they have a contract with an outside vendor to do some of this work, to break up the workflow. So it is capacity of getting the right people in there that are accountants that know how to do a complex journal entry.
Yeah, you can see in the quarterly report that's in your board book, they didn't spend as much as they wanted to this quarter. And Bryce and I were talking about in the office, it seems that they are having a capacity problem.
I just hand wrote on the bottom of the recommendations, fill the jobs, provide the required services, because this isn't so much a case of whether they're on the surplus or deficit.
It's reimbursed, yeah.
It's using
20, you know, they've gone from 25% to 20% vacancies. That just seems a shame that money that's being allocated for services important to people aren't getting done because they don't have enough people. And, you know, I see this response to people wanting jobs in the city, the response to Mayor Ryan's request for people interested. So it seems like they should be able to fill jobs, and that would be, I think, the biggest recommendation here is get those jobs filled so that you can provide the services you're supposed to be providing. We don't want another repeat of the lead abatement, turning $1 million to the federal government. So that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Anybody else have any other comments or questions? If not, we can move on. I'm just going to ask that we accept and file the other reports. And,
Motion.
Okay, thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that needs to have a public comment?
Did we finish our action on the capital budget? What did we say? Are we in favor of the 38 million that
I don't think we.
there in the council?
We
did not opine on the total. We left off with Fred's recommendation that a policy is established for the three tranches.
Which we didn't, I won't even think
Yeah,
to
we
feed
talked
on.
about that, but I
Yeah.
think there was a couple more comments that we didn't quite get to, which is, you can see the trend in the 5-year capital plan of their proposed spending increasing. But
Yeah, but that service has been dropping off, so there's more capacity for it.
Right.
That's exactly what.
So there's a fundamental question of
Can they afford it?
the council and the mayor have adopted a $38 million plan. It's now before the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. Do we say, do we bless it, or do we say that's too much, as apparently the controller's office is saying? I personally think that because of the reduction in debt service for capital projects, large capacity that we have to borrow, over $1 billion, I would be in favor of putting the blessing on the $38 million program.
I mean, that may be something, would we want to wait till we put together our proposal for the capital budget and then put that all together in one thing, or do you want to do it now?
I don't know whether or not we want to take a position right now prior to the court.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
I guess I just see that as our fundamental job.
But the financial plan is not consistent right now with
Right.
the capital plan. I don't think it would be my advice, would be that it'd be inappropriate to affirm or disaffirm the debt cap until we understand how it's gonna impact the general fund. That's the wrong word, the proposed borrowing amount, until we understand how it's going to affect the financial plan. And it's not reflected in what we've seen yet. So, and we also are looking at a financial plan that has no room for error. So there's a little bit more
And a
risk
gap.
involved with,
And a gap plan.
with increasing debt.
Then you
ratio.
could, and take that position and say that you're against the 38 million, because it should be consistent. But I just think, maybe I'm misunderstanding things, but I think when things come before us, that's our job, to take a position on it, for or against. Isn't that what we exist for?
Not necessarily.
it's premature.
Yeah, I think it's to make recommendations, but it's not to take necessarily a position on each and everything. So we've made recommendations, for example, on how to proceed going forward, but not necessarily whether we're on one side or the other when they end. And I think this may be one of those times where we're saying, you need to think through your whole policy and come up with something that makes logical sense, that fits in within the financial plan, and so that we can then better, make recommendations for you. So I think it's in between there. Tom, do you see what I'm saying? I think it's sort of half fish, half fowl at this point. I don't know. Tim, what do you think?
No, so I would agree with you on that. But I guess the question that I was going to ask the group that's a little bit outside of this is given all the urgency and the condition that we're in, and I know we just approved our 2026 meeting schedule. Our first meeting is in March. And so being new to this entity and having a new administration coming in, do we think it appropriate to have a meeting sooner with the administration to come in and talk to us about stuff? Or is that March date the right cadence for us?
I think we can talk with the new administration. I mean, obviously I will, if the board wants me to, I will reach out to the mayor-elect, see if he wants to come and meet with us ahead of time to talk about some of these things, maybe this month.
Depending on who's hired, it's going to take them at least 3 months to try to get acclimated to what their job responsibilities are. Let alone,
We could ask him to come, and talk about this.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
So that he has some ideas and where we are and to prepare him going forward. So if that's what you're asking, Tim, I think that's a good idea. I'll try to go ahead and set something up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll open it up to the other directors, but that was just my thought on that.
No, I think it's a good idea. I don't know, what does everybody else think?
Yeah.
Fine?
Yeah.
Bring him to?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. If there's nothing else, then I think I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Hey, I'll give you that gladly.
Okay. Thank you. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties, we would have been done by 4.
$38 million.
Yeah, that's okay.
In the charge, so